This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking. And Stephen Buonocore in the third chair.
Could have tied Terrace for third chair most appearances. Gah!
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming. Coming to the Vibra jet plane, sailing against those high winds to bring Steven back home to us again. Today's edition is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon. Those are the men and women who help us keep the lights on. Today, Alindo Castro, Andre Fulstad, Eric Beeson, Eric, oh my God, what happened to your name, Langenbach, and Evan Inman. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ Walter Voda Vakelin and the self-appointed podfather, purveyor of Stronghold Games and gamer guru Grandi, Stephen Bruno Bastian Buonocore. Let's begin. Each year in Essen, Germany, it hosts one of the most important gatherings of the global gaming community in the entire world. Spieltag brings tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, you can't tell, I mean, turnstile, who knows, gamers, publishers, designers, and artists together for a wild whirlwind of surging meetings, demos, introductions, networking, and more. But what do we really know about Germany? Question. What is something that you can do in Germany that you can't do almost anywhere else in Europe because the Nazis were against it? And the modern German government is loath to do anything that might be seen as following in their footsteps. Reinhard Russ.
A bungee jump off the Zugspitze.
Sigismund Stephen.
You are not permitted in modern Germany to display a swastika.
The question was, what are you permitted to do?
Oh, I got it.
So that makes you both
wrong.
Cigarette smoking in entertainment venues.
Ah.
Who knew those Nazis hated smoking? All those bad guys in all those movies smoking all those long cigarette holders? I feel like I've been lied to all these years. Issue number 2. Being as it is in Europe, of course, many folks consider Spiel in Essen, Germany, to be the capital of Euro board games, also known, of course, as the German board game, or egomaniacally, the designer board game, now integral to the gaming community. These economically themed, plainly blitzed, player-isolating games are fairly new to the world of games. Question. What is considered to be the first Euro game by most gaming aficionados? And who is the chief designer and, handicapping the question for Steven, who was the publisher? Mark Reinhagen Ross.
I'm gonna go Kinitska, but I don't know the one. I don't know the game. I'd be guessing. I don't.
Mike Zellinger Steven.
Settlers of Catan.
You're wrong.
No.
Wrong. Both of you are wrong. Published in 1964, the game was Acquire. Designed by Sid Saxon and published by Avalon Hill, Hasbro,
Classic.
3M.
Oh, nice.
3M publishes games and more.
Yes.
Issue number 3. With Christmas and Hanukkah right around the corner, of course, many gamers' thoughts are now turning toward vast piles of loot or small precious treasures that they may not have to buy themselves or perhaps just justify buying for themselves. While some folks might look to the newest hotness or the golden classic they have not yet scored for that collection, others are thinking about spending time with friends and family, gaming, going to the movies, or just hanging out. Question. What is the name of one of the most anticipated party games of 2016 in which people assume hidden roles, either liberals or fascists, each turn enacting various policies in which one possible win condition will probably cause a furor? Irvin Rommel Ross.
Not Hitler. I don't know.
Felix Steiner Steven.
Secret Hitler.
Ah, Steven is correct.
Oh, yes.
The game is called Secret Hitler. What could possibly go wrong with that? Issue number 4. Although games have been with us for thousands of years, modern gamers are constantly looking for the latest innovations in gaming. Whether it's themes, bling, mechanics, or conditions, we are always looking for something new that will catch fire and take the entire community by storm. Question. What am I thinking is the most significant current trend affecting board games today? Caution. This is a completely objective question with only a single correct answer in the vein of what is in my pockets.
Yeah.
Rosenberg Russ.
Lint.
Snatched. You've taken my example and run with it. That's excellent. Snatched Stephen.
This is ridiculous. Miniatures games.
That makes you wrong. You're back on the big bong wrong train. Campaigning. Whether it's the burgeoning games like Descent, Imperial Assault, Level 7, etc., or the newest sensation legacy games with the latest Seafall making such a big splash. See what I did there? People are wanting to sit down with the same folks experiencing a story that grows and expands with continued plays. That's what I'm saying, and I'm sticking to it. And that's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by
Battle Foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
Hello.
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 Hey, and welcome to, well, episode 201 of the D6
We have
Generation.
broken the barrier.
We're on
This
to
is
the
what
next.
wait. This is what it's like on the other side.
Exactly. I'm Russ Wakeland.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Stephen Buonocore, president of Stronghold Games.
Hey, Stephen. Welcome back to the show.
I am so excited to be here, guys.
Yeah,
I'm
you missed it by
incredible.
one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, like you could, first of all, we got to tell everybody that I was supposed to be on the last
true.
episode, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It was scheduled. Everything was there in stone. And then you call me like, we're doing a special episode, so we got to postpone you. Like, all right. And then you announce who's had the most third chairs.
Yes.
After Rafe, of course, that wouldn't count.
Right.
And Terrace wins.
Yeah,
How does
that's true.
Terrace beat me?
Well,
because
He's a
he-
wily Canadian, man.
No, it's
He-
I
beats me by
blame
one.
the Illuminati. I blame the Illuminati, who I think
Right.
is probably based in Canada, based on everything that I'm seeing now.
I think it might be.
I blame campaign financing reform. I think if you just, if maybe we hadn't allowed so much donations from Geek Nation Tours.
The Canadians.
Right.
It's dirty Canadian political
Right.
money.
It is.
Stephen.
They're trying to control our elections here, Stephen. I don't know what to tell you.
And we don't mean national. We mean on the D6 generation.
That's right. Yes. This has nothing to do with any national elections that may or may not recently have occurred.
May not have happened by the time the show airs.
Right. We have. Yeah, this is an escape. We're not going to talk about any of that nonsense. Instead,
That's right.
On today's show, we're going to talk about Essen 2016. Apparently, Stephen was just there, right?
We're not talking about fiscal policy.
No, definitely not. I don't know anything about that.
Talking
Maybe
gamer
either.
policy.
All I know about fiscal policy is that I never have enough game money for the games I want.
Right. We got to improve that fiscal policy.
Yeah.
And also, we're going to talk about what attracts us to new games, right? So what?
Yes.
It's in 2016 here. We are spoiled for choice as gamers, right? There are so many great games.
What is it like, Stephen? Now, when I was researching Rapid Fire this afternoon, I read an article that said for the past several years, the gaming industry has grown roughly 20% a year. Is that true?
That's about true. Yes, that's about the correct number.
That's pretty healthy growth.
It's crazy.
It is.
And that would
very
explain why we feel like we're spoiled for choice.
Exactly. So
Not to mention the number of new titles that are coming out year after year, and we'll talk about that I think later.
So how does one of these things come a breakthrough hit? And what does Mr. Buonocore look for when he's trying to pick a hot new game for Stronghold to produce? I thought that'd be kind of fun to talk about.
Can't wait.
It's going to be great. But first, we have some housekeeping to do here. First, whenever Steven comes on the show, it's always very exciting because oftentimes, and I'm not saying he's going to do this tonight, but oftentimes he comes bearing gifts for you, our listeners.
That's true. It's nice just to have him, Russ.
It is.
Don't make it seem like it's nice
No.
because sometimes he gives away free
I don't
stuff.
expect him to give away
It's
free
nice, and coincidentally,
Right.
sometimes he gives away free
stuff.
stuff.
He should in no way feel obligated to give you, our listeners, anything.
He should feel absolutely no pressure whatsoever to follow
whatsoever.
the tradition that he has established,
Right.
firmly established, by the way,
Yes.
in the minds of tens of thousands of gamers around the world,
Right.
that
So
he gives away free stuff. That's
so you-
absolutely nothing he needs to actually follow up on.
No.
Basically, you're twisting my arm to say, let's have a Stronghold Games con.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so-
well, you know.
Yes,
what was
a
that?
bit,
Oh,
a bit,
Stephen, that is very generous of you. That is a great idea. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Buonocore.
Yes. Stephen, thank you so much for doing a great
Very
contest.
nice.
We really
Well
appreciate
done.
this. So,
Wow, that is so nice of you, Stephen.
so Stephen, what should we do for a contest? Do you have any ideas there floating around your
Well, let me just think about like off the top of my head.
Okay.
It's at the top
With
of my
absolutely
head.
no preparation whatsoever.
No,
What
we
do you
didn't
got
talk
for
about
us?
this in the slightest.
No.
So maybe we should have a contest, and we'll do this in Twitter, right? In Twitter.
Yes,
Twitter makes it fun and fast and furious.
Yeah.
Fast and Furious. Love that. So, anybody out there, they have to give their favorite boast. And what does that mean? Well, we're going to be talking about the Dragon and Flagon maybe a little bit, which, the great Jeff Engelstein and family game.
Mhm.
They had a design that we just did very recently, and we're going to have a contest sort of based on it where you can give your favorite boast, possibly by one of the characters in the game or just your favorite boast. If you're in a tavern brawl and you jumped on top of a table, what would be that boast that you would
I have
give?
one. I have one.
I have one.
You go first.
I
You
have
go
one.
first. Yeah.
I'm going to go first.
All right.
Okay. As
Yep.
Teo, as Teo the monk.
Yeah.
Okay. Ready? You think you have Zen? I have Zen.
That's good.
That's pretty good.
darn good.
Well, I was thinking of Thras the Barbarian, which is my favorite character. And so after she hits you with a piece of furniture, this one's for the miniature gamers out there. After she hits you with a piece of furniture, she yells, "You've been tabled!" Because miniature gaming.
Wow.
Anyway, that's
Nice
the best.
play on words there.
Yeah,
Nice
it's the best
play on
I
words.
could come
But
up with.
I will do
Yeah.
this as the paladin, who is Sir Stephen.
Oh,
The
see, I didn't
power
even
of the
notice that.
stronghold will defeat you.
Ooh, that's okay. All right, cool. So we're sure of one thing, you all can do better than that. So
Clearly.
So what you should do is go ahead and construct a tweet with your favorite boast that may or may not be from Dragon and Flagon. Give us a good boast from a character in Dragon and Flagon, and include
Any
in your
character
tweet.
standing on a table in the middle of a tavern brawl.
Yes. Now here's the tricky bits. You want to make sure we can find your tweet, so you need to include 3 things. Number 1, the hashtag D6G pick me, all one word, right? Number 2, at Stronghold Games, and number 3, at the D6 Generation. So that means Steven will see it, we'll see it, and we'll all know it's the hashtag for the contest, which again is hashtag D6G pick me, and then put in your really short and pithy, because it's Twitter, so it has to be.
Because it's Twitter and we've already taken up half of your
Exactly.
characters.
See, brevity is the soul of wit. So come up with a really good boast, and then Stephen, if we're going to randomly pick two people,
2 people are going to get. What are they going to get, Steven?
what are they going to get?
All right. Well, I think while we are talking about the Dragon and Flagon, some people might have it. Some people might not want that style of game. I will allow 2 winners. First 2 winners that are picked.
First 2 winners.
The first 2 people that are picked by the great Russ and Craig, they will pick any game in the Stronghold Games catalog. How's that?
Ooh, that's
That
awesome.
is generosity right there.
Anything.
That is why this
Oh.
man is a human being.
That is awesome. So thank you, Stephen. So again, tweet it, give us your battle cries, and include the hashtag D6G.
Not battle cries.
Boasts.
Boasts.
Yes. Or battle. Yeah,
Boasts.
boastful battle cries. It all works.
Not battle cries.
All right,
They're not
boasts.
battle cries. I will disqualify any battle cry that
All right,
crosses my desk.
fine. Craig's up in the ante here. And then 2 winners will be chosen from those tweets, and we'll give you till, what do you think, Craig, the end of the month? Should we do to the end of November? Just because the next episode will
The end
be
of November?
Yeah, let's do the end of November.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
All right. So you have till December 1st.
We could announce it from England.
We could announce it. That'd be kind of fun. Okay.
Oh, how cool is
We'll
that?
announce it from
That'd be
England.
pretty
So
neat.
we'll announce it from
We
the
will
old world.
tweet out a selfie, a D6G selfie, which
Us holding a sign.
Russ has
Yes.
decided. Russ has decided that the theme of our trip to England is going to be duck-faced D6G selfies.
I did not decide.
What?
that. What?
Yeah, you totally did that. You were like, we're going to duck-face our way across England or something. I don't know.
Did we? Okay. All right,
Yes,
fine.
I certainly didn't make any comment about selfies.
Oh my God.
Anyway, yeah, we'll do that.
It's a new world, people. I can't explain anything anymore.
That's right.
Right.
We're beyond it. Beyond the curtain.
We are. We're in a whole new world on many levels.
Ooh, a whole new. No, I won't.
No, don't. Okay, so moving on. So that you have at the
All right.
contest. Thank you, Stephen, so much. It's always a pleasure
That is
having
very
the show.
generous, Stephen. And we should say that Stephen did offer way before we were actually levering his
We
arm.
did not
behind his
actually
head.
bribe
No.
him
Yeah.
to do that.
I always love to give away some stuff when I come on the show, and I thank you for having me because I enjoy
Always
this.
a
And
blast.
we really do enjoy each other's companies on some
We do
strange
have
and
on some
wonderful level.
strange-
It is a strange and wonderful level.
You guys are
masochistic
strange
level.
and I am wonderful. I
That's
understand.
exactly what it is. That's exactly right.
Wow, that was very
well
clever.
played, sir. Well played.
That was very clever.
Speaking of strange and wonderful, we
Once
ran
again, proving that even a blind squirrel occasionally finds a nut.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There you go.
You're welcome.
So also we ran into Steven not too long ago at Dunkin' Donuts. Do you remember that, Steven?
Oh, I did.
Bumped into
Yes.
you right there. And do you remember what we discussed with you in Dunkin' Donuts on the Lost Chapters there?
Not a clue. Yes,
Okay.
I do. We talked about stuff that we wanted to do during the holidays and gift giving
Yes.
during the holidays and just being with our friends and things. And we had all kinds of great ideas. So I think that everybody out there should check out that Lost Chapter.
Yeah.
If they want a completely fulfilling holiday season, they certainly should.
I think you should.
The only way to do it.
Craig, if someone wants to get
and what's the
Lost
best way to do it, Russ?
Well played, sir. So what you want to do is
Well
head on over to our website at thed6generation.com. And in the upper right-hand corner, you will see a little link up there that says Patreon. Click on that, and that will take you to our Patreon page, which will tell
Do
you
yourself a
all-
favor. Don't watch the video.
But it'll teach you everything you need to know about what Patreon is, and essentially it's a way for you to leave a little tip for us for every episode. And if you choose to tip us a couple bucks an episode, just to, little kind of, little something, for the effort.
Little something, little
if you
tip of the hat, if you will.
Yeah, just a little something, when you do that, we will give you a little something back, and that is the entire Lost Chapter database will be yours, and you'll have access to it, kind of like Netflix, as long as you continue to tip us a couple bucks an episode. And in there is over, I don't even know what we're up to now, Craig. It's like a couple hundred, right? 100, mid-hundreds.
Anyway, it can't be a
lots.
couple hundred, but it's got to be way more than 100.
Over 100. I want to say about 120, somewhere like that now. And there is at half an hour each. That's a lot more hours of content. Just in case you're running out of the 4-hour content, we got even more over there. And it's usually us just chatting with the third chair folks, kind of off the record in Dunkin' Donuts for no inexplicable reason, just kind of hanging out. So good times. And we, of course,
The other two guys let their hair down.
Yeah, we
If
really.
you've ever met me, you know where that joke's coming from.
So we really appreciate all the guys over and gals over at Patreon. You guys help keep the lights on. You let us keep doing the show, and you give us the budget to go and do crazy things like go to conventions and participate and find out all the great stuff that's coming down the pike, and then, of course, come back and share that with you.
And meet these nice guys who are going to give you free games.
Yeah, exactly. See? So it's the circle of gaming. It's, like
It's all this big circle of geek.
Exactly right. So, Craig, what's the time?
See, I didn't even sing that one.
You didn't. So what's the
What
time
are you
now
saying?
for?
What time is it?
It's the circle.
Oh, that's Steve. That's not my fault. That was not me. That was not me.
And you can't cut it out if I do it during the main
No.
episode. I love
See,
it.
because I'm trying to reach for this button that will let me go. Achievements in gaming.
Wow.
That was quite the gaming you got there. Yeah,
It's gotten much longer than since the last time. I was on
well,
the show.
we're in the second. We're in the
We're into the third century of the D6G. I think we
Wow.
need to shake things up a little bit.
Sometimes you got to change it, a little bit.
From now on, every time I do that, I'm going to make it last longer and longer and longer.
So anyway, Achievements
That's
Gaming.
an idle threat.
Okay,
an
yeah.
idle. I am not going to do that.
Achievements, of course, is brought to us by all of our fine friends over at Patreon. So thank you so much for all the support over there. What have you guys been playing lately? How about you, Steven? What have you been playing lately?
Oh my God! You're gonna start with me. Oh,
Oh well.
I'm gonna have a very long list, and 90% of it, 99% of it, I can't talk about. I'll talk about what I can, I guess, talk
All right,
about.
fair
first,
enough.
Right. So, Pandemic Legacy. We started this almost when the game came out. The game came out like at the end of last year, and we started our Pandemic Legacy campaign in January, and we were playing January in January, and we played February in February, sort of just because of the way we were getting together, not necessarily on purpose. But now it's November, and we're in August. So, due to everyone's schedules and things like that, we haven't been able to finish it, but still going great. I mean, it's a beautiful game. And the unfolding nature that legacy portion of an already great game, Pandemic, is just wonderful. So,
now, Steven, how many plays have you had now? What game count are you up to?
Oh, each month is at least one game. So we're up to August, and we've failed at least 4 times now. Wow. So at least 12 games approximately we've done. We may be in September now. I'm trying to remember if we actually got out of August, but I'd say around 12. So it's
That's impressive.
We're doing well.
Yeah, that's good.
So would you say that the legacy mechanic is now a seminal new mechanic in gaming?
Without a doubt. I think it almost became that even with Risk Legacy,
Yeah, I think
which
so.
a lot of people, didn't like the game. I actually had I started a Risk Legacy campaign, and I thought it was phenomenal.
I was my family's playing it. We're loving it. Yeah.
I was just loving this, and I literally figuratively had a table flip with two of my friends basically saying, "We're done, not playing this anymore,"
Why?
because they loved the Legacy. They gave the Legacy a 10 and the Risk a 1. So
Risk, right.
they just did not want to play the game anymore because they didn't like. Because it basically is you're playing Risk, and then just things are happening on a legacy basis.
Right.
And I got what they were saying, but I still loved the experience. Now with Pandemic, you have a brilliant system. Pandemic is a brilliant cooperative game, and now you add the legacy portion, and it's just phenomenal.
Now, have you gotten to Seafall yet, Stephen?
Seafall. It literally arrived about a week or two ago in my house. I had it on pre-order, and I just got it. I have not cracked it open yet, but and I won't crack it open until we finish Pandemic
Good
Legacy.
call. Good
Because I'll
call.
probably be playing with the same people. Have you played it yet?
I have. I've played the first session, and it will. The first session's awesome, and it will break your mind. At the end of it, it's fantastic. I'm not going to spoil it. There's even really cool sort of stuff right in the beginning, but then.
You just spoiled the beginning.
No. I'm just saying it's exciting.
He's good at that.
No, it's not spoiled. It's awesome. But then it gets. I guess it's going to get even better. I don't know. I haven't played another one yet. But our next game is scheduled. A bunch of us had work stuff. And I have a dedicated crew. So we're going to go back to it Thanksgiving week. Is our next play. So we're looking forward to that. But I really like it. And I think it's cool because it's a unique game experience in Legacy. So it's Risk and Pandemic were other games enhanced by Legacy. So now we got our first real. Full on new rule set there.
I'm wondering about it because it has not dampened my enthusiasm for it at all. Because I think Rob Davio, who's the designer, 100% designer of Sequel, I think he's a genius, and he's a friend too. He's just a great guy. There has been some negative comments about Seafall online, and it has not, even in the slightest, other than people are just not disappointed by it. Not that I heard anything like, oh, this particular thing, because people aren't giving spoilers, hopefully. But I'm not dampened by that at all. I'm just what you told me just now even reinvigorates me that you played the first game and you were like, wow, this is great.
So here's what I think.
I'm excited.
Yeah, this is not a spoiler at all, but it's one of those games where it's
no,
it's not a spoiler. Not a spoiler. This is a core mechanic of it. It's part of the fundamentals. It's an exploration game.
Yeah.
And there is as much player interaction as you want there to be. So for some people, that will make them happy. And for other people, that will make them sad, right? So kind of like Merchants and Marauders could be a game where you just build your own little system and you never really hit anybody, or people could attack each other and have massive battles, right? It depends on what you do. And it's nothing like Merchant and Marauders except that it's a seafaring game. But what I'm saying is it can be almost a solo experience or it can be very interactive. It's up to you, right? You and your player group.
Well, if I have the ability to interact with you, meaning shoot at your ship, I'm going after you.
Of course you are.
No doubt.
So that, but I could see how people were like, but I could see how that wouldn't appeal to everyone. Like some people like player interaction to be so locked down that it's required. And of course, the game could evolve as I play even more so. But I could obviously run into something that makes me change my opinion of this. But I like it. But I like those kind of games where the story's unfolding. You know what it reminds me of? Have you ever played Tales of the Arabian Nights?
Love it.
Did you like that game?
It's one of those games that, it's definitely not for everybody. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely like a game that's like all over the place. Like you could lose that game pitifully. Mm-hmm. But when I play that game and like my entire game goes to crap, like because I get thrown in jail in the dungeon, and I can't get out, and all of a sudden my gender changes. And it's like all these weird things happen in that game. I love it because at the end I have this ridiculously fun story to tell with my friends.
And that's what I've been telling people. Seafall is the same kind of game, even to the point where it has the mechanic where, and this is not a spoiler because it's a core mechanic, when you go to an island and explore, you actually are given a number in a giant book of little passages to read, just like Tales of Arabian Nights. And then you read the passage, and then it turns in like a make your own adventure book. And I'm making something up now. This is not actually a real one. It'll say like, as you're exploring an island, you find some, bones lying on the ground. Do you respect the burial site, or do you dig them up and see what's there? And then you choose. And then the person reading the book to you is told, if the player chooses to dig up the bones, go to page 17. If he chooses to ignore them, go to page 18. And then there's a consequence. Now, some players will say, that's totally random, but for you and I who like storytelling games, it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So if you like that kind of game, you're going to love this. If you're like a grognard that wants a really crunchy game that's pure tactics and no luck, you might not like it as much. That's
I'm more turned on now by this than I have been. So this is great. Very excited.
That's what she said. So moving on. What else you playing, Steve?
Hey, Dice Tower Network, man. Gotta keep it close.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
The rest of my stuff is almost stuff I can't talk about. Coming back from Essen, and we're probably going to talk about this a little later on. Is that I bring back so many games from all the partners that that I might potentially work with, and over the last several weeks since I got back from Essen, and this is going to be going on almost through the end of the year, but it's culminating sort of at BGG Con in the end of this month. We're selecting our games, the new stuff with new partners for the rest of the year. So that's a very exciting time. And literally, we had a list of 50 games, mostly already published by small publishers in Europe and Asia, and some prototypes. And we're churning through them, and we make a short list, and then we go and we play them again, those games, and then we bring them to a con in New Jersey, which we were at a week and a half ago, and we then vet them with real gamers, and we make sure that these games are the right ones to play, and we're coming down to the final analysis on which ones we want to do for next year, and it's very exciting. It's been so hard this year because there are so many great games that we have. I mean, not only do we have a plethora of games in every possible genre that anybody can possibly want, 1,200 new games coming out at Essen. Now you also have just great games as well. So it's not just a lot of games. There's a lot of really, really good games coming out.
Cool. That's awesome.
Nice.
Craig, how about you, sir? What have you been playing?
Nothing.
What?
I have not played a single thing.
Sad panda. Sad.
Yeah. But I did go to the movies instead of playing a game. So when we get there, I'll cover that.
That's cool.
What about you, Russ? I'm sure you've got some D&D under your belt.
I do. Unfortunately, I've been doing a lot of work travel too, so only a couple games. Dungeons and Dragons again. We're continuing the Horde of the Dragon Queen here with my family, and it's been a blast. We have gone even farther now into it, and the creativity of my crew never ceases to amaze me. They literally role-play themselves past just about every encounter in some strange way that I never would have thought possible. So it's really hilarious to see.
So what system? Which
5e,
version?
Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
You're using 5th. Very good. You like it? I have not played 5th.
Yes, we are in love with 5th edition. So
excellent.
Horde of the Dragon Queen is one of the first modules that came out for 5th edition. It takes characters from level 1 to like level 11. And I just grabbed that off the shelf to play it because A, I knew it was brand new, so no one had read it, and B, I love the DM, but I didn't have the time to really create an entire world and an entire campaign, so I just kind of used off the shelf, and I've been tweaking it as we go. And they've been great. They've been they're doing a thing with a castle now, and they've been working their way through it, and they've been basically sneaking their way through and borrowing, stealing their way past every situation, and somehow avoiding most fights, which has been pretty impressive. To the point where they managed to totally ambush two of the main characters and take them out with in 30 seconds. They had nothing, and I really was working it. I was like, okay, I can't let this be easy, but they totally played it out. All the dice went in their favor. It was really funny to watch, and so it's still having a great time with that game. And also, so finally, Stephen, my Kickstarter, I backed the now famous Conan Kickstarter. Are you familiar with this?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the one that has been out for a long time, and it was very, very delayed, and it took forever. But the reason several of us were excited about it was, A, it is chock full of plastic miniatures, which, I'm always a sucker for. And B, it is what I have now discovered about myself is my absolute favorite game format, which is the format I now call the Overlord format, which is the format like Descent, where one player is the evil Overlord, and the rest of the table, typically 4 players or so, are heroes battling the Overlord and his evil plans, right? So this would be games like Imperial Assault and Descent and Level 7 and Super Dungeon Explorer, and those kind of, and there's many more of those, right? It became sort of a big genre after Descent kind of started it, and I love it, and I'm really enjoying it. And Conan is another one of these. Now, Craig, it's not a camp. The only downside to it is it doesn't have a campaign in the book, but it's got some. I played the first version of this with some friends of ours. There was a big Halloween party. I went to that. We played Conan, and it was really interesting because while it doesn't have a campaign, each encounter is self-contained, and there is sort of a story to it. So you can play more than one. But what's cool about it is each of the players takes on one of the characters, either Conan or one of his sidekicks. So if you know the Conan books and the Conan movies, you know most of the Conan sidekicks, and there's many. And what's also interesting about it is because I backed in the Kickstarter, not only did I get the base game, which is this huge, massive box that's extremely heavy full of all these miniatures, then I also got all the stretch goals, and because the game did so well, there's an entire box that's equal to the original game box, and that's just full of all the expansion figures. So there is lots of stuff, which then adds... What's interesting about it is, instead of sort of a tile dungeon laying game, which is how Imperial Assault and Descent and Level 7 look, this game actually includes several game boards, a little more like Super Dungeon Explorer, that are double-sided, and there are different environments. So one of them is like in a village, one of them is in a castle, one of them is on two ships, that have been kind of lashed together, and it's kind of like a pirate battle. But what's really interesting about it is the fatigue. There's a sort of a fatigue mechanic that is really pretty clever, that works in favor of both the Overlord and the heroes. And basically the only way you can get your fatigue back is essentially passing your next turn. And so instead of, unlike Level 7, where the more you do, you give it to the Overlord, the more you do, the less you're going to be able to do next turn. And the other thing that's interesting about it is if you save some of your fatigue points during the Overlord's turn, that's good because you can spend your points to make your defensive rolls better. So, like, for example, if the Overlord says, my orc is going to throw a spear at you, you as the hero could spend some of your fatigue points to block with your shield and have bonus dice in the defense roll, or get rerolls in the defense roll. So if you spend all your fatigue in your turn, not only will you be bad on defense, but then in the next turn, you'll have to do a full rest action to get some of your fatigue back. So it's really to get all of you get some back, but there's these two fighting modes. There's like ready mode where you get a little bit of fatigue back, or there's sort of like defensive mode where you get a lot of your fatigue back, but in defensive mode you can't really run or attack or anything. So it really makes some interesting situations, and if the Overlord can put pressure on one hero, he can really kind of mess that guy up, and the other guys have to come to his defense and kind of defend him. It's really, really interesting mechanics and a little different than a lot of the other games we've seen. So, plus the figures are fantastic. I really like the models as well.
I hear it's a very nice game.
It is. It is. Have you played it?
This game was on Kickstarter, raised like $3 million.
It did very well on Kickstarter, yes.
And it was about a year late in delivery, wasn't it?
It was very late, yes.
There's another game that was on Kickstarter exactly at the same time as that game, and was delivered on time. Remember what that was?
What was that game, Stephen?
Space Cadets Away Mission.
Of course it was, and that's a fantastic game too. Another one of my favorite, but Space Cadets is a pure co-op game, right? Which is also very good, though. I really like it. Actually, I think Space Cadets Away Missions I like because the AI in that game doesn't feel game controlled. Somehow, the way you guys did the mechanics in that, like it really feels like they move correctly. Like a lot of the AI control games, you can figure out how to game the AI. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel right. And somehow Space Cadets really feels that AI feels correct, which I really like.
Because the aliens all have different types of movements, right. So they're coming at you in various ways. Right. Like the bugs are like going to group up before they come towards you, and and other ones are moving in different ways. So it's it definitely has that kind of feeling. But I'm boasting for my for our ability to obviously have gotten the game out on time. We're Conan, which is a great game and beautiful miniatures.
That's the big problem with the Kickstarter stuff. It can take a long time, and it was very, very late. But you reminded me of another mechanic in there, Stephen, that I really like, which is the Overlord has this. One of the things, the game is definitely overproduced, like at levels that, well, actually very similar levels to what you guys did with Space Cadets, because it's it's a lot of cool stuff in there, and they got all the inserts, so the guys all have little places to stay, similar to that. But they gave the Overlord in this game a hard plastic raised surface, which holds all of these cards and slots to keep track of all of the Overlord stuff. And another interesting mechanic is they have something called the river, which is very much like the river in poker. So if you play poker, you know the term river, Stephen, which is a row of cards.
Sure.
So in this game, there's a row of the monster cards. So each of your units on the battlefield as the Overlord is on this river card. And above each river card slot is a number. And as you go from left to the right, the number gets higher. So for example, that's the amount of fatigue it costs the Overlord to activate that particular monster. So to activate the monster in the first slot, it's 1 fatigue. activate the guy in the second slot, it's 2, and it goes up, and there's like 8 cards. So to activate the guy farthest down the river, it costs 8 to activate him. Now, when you activate a monster, you pay its cost. The Overlord can then move and attack with a monster on the board, and then he moves the card to the end of the river and slides the river all down 1. So the Overlord can activate any monster he wants in the river, even the one at the end, but the problem is the ones on the far right cost more to activate. So if I want to double activate my super powerful guy, he's cheap the first time, but he's like 8 points the second time, which gives me my whole thing. So it really forces the Overlord to keep iterating through all of his units, and when his units die, the cards stay in the river, they just go face down, so it becomes harder for the Overlord to act quickly with the monsters he wants, or to have until those cards get out of his river. So it's really interesting, innovative mechanics that I've never seen in a game like this before. So it really brings a lot of new stuff to the table. Highly recommend it.
Cool.
I'll let you know more as I play more, though, because I don't know how good the other campaign missions are, so we'll find out. All right, so that's the games I've been playing. What about modeling? Steven, you're not a big modeler.
Sadly, no. But I dream of it, and I do it vicariously through you, gentlemen.
Yeah. Craig, have you been doing any modeling?
I have, but I refuse to talk about it right now.
Oh,
why is that?
Why is
it's
that?
a secret project.
Oh no!
It's a secret It's one of my patented secret projects, and
Wait.
I will say that I have built 54 infantry and 1 vehicle so far.
This better not be a new game system. This is a new game system I have to buy into. I'm going to be very put out.
No, I do not. I do not believe it will impact you in any negative way whatsoever.
Oh, okay, good. Is it? Wait, I do like it when it's a game you're building both sides for, and I get to play it, but you painted everybody up. Is it one of those?
I cannot confirm or deny.
Aha! Well, I know what this is. Oh, I think I know what this is. Oh, I won't say anything.
You probably don't.
Oh, darn it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
this is one of those random impulse things that I don't think anybody could have foreseen.
Okay.
Certainly not me.
Fair enough.
But I do want the drama of springing it on you eventually.
All right, excellent.
So,
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to this. Okay, good.
Okay.
Let's see. I unfortunately also, because of all my business travel, I was barely able to play anything. I've done no modeling. However, on my birthday list, which was recently, because I was traveling where we haven't celebrated my. I come home now, and now Nicole's traveling. So on the table are all my birthday gifts, just staring at me with like evil intent, knowing that kind of tantalizing me because I can't open them.
They're wrapped, right?
Yes, they are.
That story makes much more sense when you actually say that they are gifts that are wrapped so you can't see them.
They are wrapped, and my daughter's done a lovely hand-drawn War Machine card, which is fantastic, like little war jacks on it and stuff. It looks awesome. So it's all sitting there beautifully wrapped, and I cannot open them until she gets back on Saturday, so I'm sitting here 2 more days just staring at my gifts. I'm hoping there's a couple of things about airbrushes in there, because I had a couple things on my list for my airbrushing, which would be very exciting, because now I've got an entire box of Conan miniatures I got to crank through. So that would be good. But yes, that's one of the things I'm liking about the airbrush now is I look at this game like Conan and I'm like, ooh, one afternoon I can do half this box. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
What about movies and shows and books? Steven, what have you been watching, reading, and other stuff?
In my copious spare time, which I don't have, but and these conventions put a crimp in that whole thing, trying to get all this stuff watched. But I've been catching up now on. I'm pretty much caught up on Flash and Arrow, all the geek shows that are on the mainstream TV. Gotham, Shield, I'm still behind on, and Luke Cage, I'm way behind on. Killjoys, Dark Matter, we talked about that. We're going to talk about that later. I've been, really excited about it, and just finished watching the second seasons of those. So those are just really, really good. Walking Dead, both of them, finished those. Of course, Game of Thrones. Can't wait to see how the whole thing finishes out. So all of that's been just fantastic. I think we're really living in a great time of geek TV.
It really
right now,
is a great time. It sure is. Cool.
Doctor Strange. I'm gonna go. I have my tickets for the dine-in theater in Bridgewater to watch Doctor Strange on Friday. I couldn't watch it last weekend because it was I was at the convention play testing all those games from Essen.
So have we all seen Doctor Strange? I have.
No, he hasn't seen it.
I'm seeing it Friday.
He's seeing it on Friday.
I saw it Friday.
Listen.
I think I saw it.
He doesn't listen. Stephen, on behalf of my co-host, I would like to apologize.
I want to talk about it. Come on.
Occasionally, Russ shows himself to be a true sociopath. This is one of those moments. The rest of us are just cardboard cutouts moving through life. That's extras in the movie that is his existence.
And
Wow.
I've been seeing a lot of coming attractions for Arrival or the Arrival.
That's at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like a big deal.
I saw that too, and I'm like, first of all, it just looks really interesting. And then I happen to notice that it was getting this 100%, and I'm like, wow. So definitely going to see that as the next geek movie after I see Doctor Strange, and I'm really looking forward to this. I don't know. It's not a documentary. It's like a sort of a mock mission to Mars.
It's down to 96. Sorry.
Oh, okay. National Geographic Channel is doing this thing called Mars. And it's I think I'm not sure it's a one-time show or is it like a mini series, but it's on a dramatized mission to Mars, and so I mean, like, obviously with my terraforming Mars and Mars being such a huge topic right now, I'm like really looking forward to that. I think that's National Geographic Channel, and it premieres on like 17th, so that's about a week from our recording right now, so probably a little after the show airs. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Very geeky stuff.
Cool. Nice. Very good. How about you, Craig?
How about me, Russ? I saw The Accountant, because what could go wrong with that?
Now, why? If you don't like games that are about mundane...
Well, because you were gone, my friend.
Is this what happened?
And everybody else was playing D&D.
All right.
And I was like, you know what? I want to do something. And there was before Doctor Strange came out. There were no like geeky movies out there, and I actually liked The Accountant.
Okay, right.
I thought it was a good. Although there's this part, there's like two. It's like he keeps having flashbacks to his past, and then he's in the situation in the present, and they're both compelling, interesting stories. But how they both like meet and the past becomes the present, like made no sense to me whatsoever. So that was kind of like I was like, what? Oh, well, it's a cool movie, and just kind of like let it go, although it's still stuck in my head. Then I went and saw Doctor Strange, which Steven has not seen.
Right.
It was the worst physical experience I think I've ever had at a movie.
What?
I didn't realize when you go to these movie theaters where it's assigned seating.
Yes.
I did not realize that when it says front general, that means only the actual front row, not that whole front section.
Oh.
And so I was going through it going, I don't know, I'm going to see if there's any tickets available, expecting the map to pop up, right?
There's no map.
And I could look at the map and see like where people were sitting. And it was a last minute thing. Like a bunch of people were like, hey, we're all going and you want to go with us? And I was like, oh, no. And then Karen was like, no, go ahead. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll go. But by the time I said, okay, I'll go, they were like, oh, well, all the seats around us are taken. So I was like, okay, fine. So I went on thinking I'll see if there's any seats and I'll buy the ticket. I'll make that choice when I see the seats. So, well, if you're going for if only the front row is left, it never gives you that choice. So, and it doesn't say you are about to buy a ticket. It's the exact same purchasing experience as it normally is, except that when it says like, okay, so this is what you're looking at, and you say yes, normally then it goes to the map, so you choose your seat. Mm-hmm. Instead, it goes, thank you. You have purchased your ticket for the front row.
Wow.
So I was sitting in the front row, and I got there early enough. Yeah. I was in the middle of the front row, which it terrified me through the previews, because previews obviously are super fast cuts. And you're so close to the screen in the front row that you cannot keep up with the action. Like, okay, so there's a moment over here. Oh, and then there's something over there. But by the time you look over there, it's gone because the cut is so fast. So I was terrified. Turns out, actual movie, not quite that fast. Although all the scenes that you've already seen on the previews where all the buildings are folding around her and everything, that's way too fast. And I don't think I caught any of that.
Oh, the combat,
but that
awesome,
was okay.
That,
that was okay. Yeah, the fight choreography and everything was awesome. Yeah. I mean, the story was cool. And then I had a family of 4 sit next to me. Uh-oh. Wide empty. The front row. Everybody else was smart enough not to get in the front row.
Of course they are.
These 4 people clearly were not smart enough to get in the front, so they were in the front row also. But the two sons, like 10-year-old, and the parents. The parents decided there were a couple seats behind them, so they were like, "You guys stay here. We're going to move back one." Mm-hmm. And the 2 10-year-olds are like, "Why can't we go back with you?" And the parents, for some inexplicable reason, wouldn't let the 2 sons move back with them. There was seats there, but they didn't let them move back. So first half of the movie, the kid's turning around right next to me going, Daddy, I don't understand why can't we, Daddy, why can't we, all through the movie, Daddy, why can't we just, until eventually the father's like, okay, fine. And he was one of those guys who, like, Dr. Strange will tell a joke, and the dad will be like, oh, yeah, yup, yup. Like, oh, seriously, you have to. And then the kid got behind me and kicked my seat like 100 times a minute.
So you had like the quintessential annoying movie experience. It was
awful. It was awful.
Yeah.
The movie itself, the fact that I thought the movie was decent probably means it was awesome and an Oscar contender,
it was.
Considering everything that was going on around
it. Was very good. All right.
So, yes.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm still listening to Ken Liu's Wall of Storms, which is the Dandelion Dynasty, book 2 in the Dandelion Dynasty, and I don't get it. I'm finding it a frustrating and disappointing experience. It is ridiculously critically acclaimed, so it very well could just be me. The world of the book is ridiculously well fleshed out. It's super elaborate, ridiculously detailed. But to me, I feel like I'm like there's 4 different stories that are sort of being told. And today I hit my first flashback within a flashback within a flashback, which caused me some not so much confusion as just frustration. And why can't we move the story forward instead of going constantly? But to understand this, you have to 3 years ago. But to understand this, 2 years ago, and it's just like I think this could have been. It's like a 40-hour or a 30 or 40-hour audiobook. Could have been a 15 to 16-hour audiobook with a really cool story. Probably even 3 of those, maybe. But instead, I'm finding it a very frustrating experience. I do not believe I will move on to book 3 when it comes out. But like I said, if you love worlds that are just ridiculously rich and well thought out and well structured, and it's extremely critically acclaimed, so could just be me. And that's all I got, because I'm watching all the same TV Russ is watching, so I'll bust in on his comments when he goes.
All right,
Russ, ready, set, go.
All right, here we go. Well, still enjoying Westworld, loving it.
Westworld is awesome. Let me talk to you about. No, just kidding.
Actually, it's getting even more interesting. I'm really liking it. You really can't talk about it anymore without giving away spoilers. So it's a very
exactly.
Show.
It's all
right. Very good though. Loving that. Also, really, I haven't finished Luke Cage yet. I'm on like episode 10, but still really enjoying that. I don't know why I'm getting noises in my computer here. I apologize. Then also, so Timeless still enjoying. So Timeless is a blast because not only am I enjoying watching it. Why am I getting all these noises on my computer? But Timeless is a blast because we're really enjoying watching it, and my girls are getting all these historic references. So my computer's still making noises. I apologize to listeners. My computer's confused. So what's been great about this is
we thought for episode 201 we would bring in a live harpist, and it's not working out.
I don't know what's happening. So it's like achievements, except achievements for Timeless. It's very strange. But what I'm enjoying about this is, so my girls are all getting really interested in these moments in history. There's been several different moments, and they go back in time, as we mentioned before. They go back in time, but what's interesting about when they go back in time is they go back into history, and they're not allowed to change history. But, of course, they go into these moments in time where it's morally ambiguous not to change history. So, like, they literally go back in time when the Hindenburg's about to crash and a bunch of innocent people are about to die, and you can't let the Hindenburg not crash. Or they go back to the moment where President Lincoln is assassinated, and they can't change the fact that Lincoln's assassinated. I mean, they could, but they're not allowing themselves to, and they're literally fighting with their emotions to do this. But what's been really a lot of fun is I just happened to my business trip. We had our big users conference down in Washington, D.C., and we were down there for Election Day, but we were there doing a users conference, and we were doing something. As we were down there, I had a couple of breaks, and I would go around and check out all the cool museums because the Smithsonian Institute's amazing. And so I was going around, and it'd be great because I'd be like, oh, look. So I'm having breakfast at this place where a couple folks at the hotel said, there's this great diner down the street. You got to go there. It's called Lincoln Diner. Best chicken and waffles you'll have north of the Mason-Dixon line. I'm like, cool, I'm going to go check this out. I love chicken and waffles. So went there, and I look up, and I realize I'm sitting across the street from Ford's Theater, the place where Lincoln was actually shot. And my girls, so I walk out, I'm like, look, girls, and I'm like texting pictures to my girls. I'm like, there's the theater we just saw on that episode. And then I'm in the National Air and Space Museum, And they've got a full scale, not a scale, but a scale model, not a 1-to-1 scale, obviously, but a scale model of the Hindenburg there. And I'm like, look, girls, there's the Hindenburg. And so it was a lot of fun. And they're like, cool. They're all getting into it and asking me questions about it. We're like looking at things. So that was a lot of fun. Also, totally nerded out in Washington, D.C. I got to sneak over. I had about a 2-hour time period on my 3 days there. They're actually my own. Everything else was all working for work. But I managed to slip out and go to the National Air and Space Museum, which is where engineering geeks like myself like to live. So one of the cool things there, and I don't know if everybody knows this, but the model of the original Enterprise that was used in the original series, the shooting model, has now been donated. It is on display at the entranceway to the National Air and Space Museum. And it's really pretty cool because they actually have a little plaque explaining why a model from a science fiction series is in the middle of an engineering museum, a museum dedicated to aerospace and engineering. And they talk about how science fiction, really inspires a lot of engineers, which I thought was really interesting. But the coolest thing about seeing the model, and I was, of course, totally nerding out because it's very large. The shooting model they used on the original series is probably the size of, it's a little bit smaller than a small car. It's pretty big.
It's 11 feet long.
Yeah, it's big.
As I recall.
Wow.
And Stephen, have you seen it in person?
I have. I think they had it there at one time, and maybe they took it away, and now it's back again.
It's back.
I've seen it. It's huge. The original series model is much bigger than any of the other Enterprise models ever built.
It's cool. It's huge. And what's really cool about it is on one side it's beautiful, and on the other side it's just flat and boring, and there's all these wires because the wires on the one side were using to illuminate all the little windows on the other side. And so, which means, of course, that on the show, you only ever saw the starboard side of the Enterprise. They never actually showed the other side, and they would just flip it, using camera tricks to flip it when they would want to show it the other way, which I thought was pretty funny. But it looks really cool up close. It's quite a nice big model. And the irony of it is, it's really cool, is when you go to the World War II area, there's also a giant model of the Enterprise. But, of course, it's the Enterprise aircraft carrier there instead, which is also really impressive modeling. But the coolest part being there is if you're into historical gaming, what's great about it is you go to these different rooms and, of course, there's a room full of biplanes from World War I and there's a room full of fighter aircraft from World War II. But the cool part about these is these aren't reproductions. These are the actual ones, which is really pretty amazing to see all that stuff. And I'm like, look, it's like Battlefield 1. Look, it's like, but I had a blast going through all that. That was a really good time.
Cool.
Also, Craig, I
have a trivia. I have a little piece of trivia about the Enterprise that I think is appropriate at this point.
Sure.
The original Enterprise, in the original series, you never see the Enterprise ever shot from the port side. You just implied why, but you always see it on the right side, and you always see it in orbit around a planet, moving from left to right, or in space from left to right. The only time you ever see it the other way is in Mirror Mirror. The episode Mirror Mirror, when everything is backwards, and of course they just took the shot and they reversed the shot. They didn't actually show you the left side.
I'm trying to remember, Stephen, in the intro when the Enterprise flies by really fast, during the intro
head
music.
On. It's all head on or just slightly.
But does it ever go by the other way?
Right.
I think it's always to the.
I think it's always to the right. I think. Could be wrong.
You're right though, and I thought I never really thought about that until I saw this, and then as soon as I saw it, I realized, of course. But it took a minute. Craig, also, I won't spoil any Doctor Strange except to say it was awesome. It was. I really enjoyed it. Also,
you don't know who's seen it or not yet. So be careful.
As Boromir once said, one does not simply walk out on Marvel credits. So make sure you stay to the very end.
Well,
very end. When you think you see the first one, keep on staying. Stay to the very end.
I was going to say, now that the other studios are starting to do it, they've got every one of theirs has 2. So
Marvel has 2 now. But also, Craig, did you see the trailers?
Yes.
Best trailers. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 trailer. OMG!
Can't come soon enough.
Oh, that was awesome.
Wait.
We were all like, done. I can leave the movie now happy. It was awesome.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Of course, the full-size Rogue One trailer, which I've seen before.
Oh, my God.
Oh, man, that looked great.
Dynasty.
Yeah, it looked really, really good. So, good stuff coming in the not-too-distant future here, which is awesome. And finally, been watching and playing a lot of Civilization 6, because when I'm on the road for work, Civ 6 is a great game to play on my little laptop there. And I'm still loving Civilization 6. It's a nice iteration on the series. It's sort of combined the cartoony graphics from Civilization Revolution with all the nice meaty detail from the other Civ games, but still some of them made the interface even better. And I played it with my daughters, multiplayer, but I've also been playing by myself, and it's fantastic. And what's really fantastic about it is all the civics lessons you can learn in there. So we've obviously been talking a lot of politics. I won't bring anything up, but a lot of people were confused about the difference between a representative republic and a true democracy. I'm like, well, as we learned from Civilization 6, I'm like listing all the different patterns of government, which was kind of fun. So that was a lot. That's really a lot of fun. And also, speaking of computer games, I finished the Battlefield 1 campaign. It was fantastic, very poignant. I thought every short story was great. The Lawrence of Arabia story was particularly good. I really enjoyed that one. And also, I am now knee-deep into these Titanfall 2 campaign, which is also really, really good. And there's a part of the game I really, really want to talk about, but it's kind of a spoiler, so I won't. But they do a really cool thing about halfway through the campaign that is the best way I've ever seen it done in a storytelling environment like that. So when it gets a little farther, I'll talk about that more. But that was a lot of fun with that as well. So, is that achievements?
That is achievements.
In a world where board gaming was king, in a time when Kickstarter ruled the web, when every day brought more and more games, now, more than ever, two men, and a revolving third chair, and a girl, a total fangirl, brought a shining light into the darkness so that all mankind would know what to buy. They are the D6 generation.
Hey everyone, time to talk about our friends over at Battle Foam. And really excited. Craig and I, as we mentioned, are going to SteamCon over in sunny England, where I understand it's actually not that sunny. But also, while we're there, of course, SteamCon will be the focus of the big Guild Ball tournament going on over there. All kinds of Guild Ball activities from Steamforged Games. Very excited about that. But the thing to know is if you are a Battle Foam fan, and you are a Guild Ball fan, then you need look no further than Battle Foam to transport all of your awesome Guild Ball stuff. They have fantastic bags specifically designed for Guild Ball, awesome foam toppers with all the Guild Ball logo and the various team and faction logos on there. They, of course, have inserts that hold all the Guild Ball accessories from templates and everything else you need. Pretty much, if you need to transport all your great Guild Ball models, then Battle Foam is the way to go. And as I think about heading over to England and trying to bring my models over there really is no better way. I mean, Battle Foam makes the toughest, the best, the most dependable luggage for transporting your models, whether it's nice, affordable, soft-sided bags or hardcore, rock-solid, could be run over with a truck, hard plastic box cases that are indestructible. Whatever you need, Battle Foam has it. And if you've got a lot of foam and you need to store some of it and only put what you need to carry in your fancy bag when you go out to game, no problem too. They got some nice cardboard carriers that are a very affordable way to organize all your models. So check it all out and more over at battlefoam.com.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap.
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey everyone, welcome back to another App of the Ep. This time around, I do want to talk about another AAA title. They seem to be coming fast and furious here as the holiday season approaches. And this one might fall off your radar, believe it or not. It is a AAA. It's getting a lot of play. And that, of course, is Titanfall 2. And the reason I think it might fall off your radar is, of course, if you're a multiplayer guy, then, of course, it might attract you. Titanfall 2 came out as it wasn't a launch title for the Xbox One, the original Titanfall, but it was right shortly after the Xbox One came out. Highly anticipated. It was really cool. It's this game that sort of allows you to transition very fluidly from an infantry fighter in a sci-fi universe that has a jump pack that can sort of jet and jump really high, as well as run along walls and do some really cool stuff. But then also you can transition seamlessly into piloting a giant mech in and out very quickly. You can ride on them, you can get into your own mech, you can fight. And in the original Titanfall, of course, the entire game is multiplayer, and there was no campaign. There was a sort of multiplayer story that kind of happened, but it wasn't really a story. And the universe was so compelling, we all hoped there would be a Titanfall story. And the multiplayer game is pretty good. So fast forward to now when Titanfall 2 just dropped. And one of the challenges Titanfall 2 has is it's really coming in at a time when there are lots of really, really great multiplayer titles hitting the streets. So Battlefield 1 just came out. Of course, people are huge fans of the Battlefield saga, the Battlefield franchise, and now it's taking place in World War I. Some really compelling stuff there. Also just came out is the new Call of Duty. Also a huge multiplayer fan, and of course Overwatch is still going strong. So lots of multiplayer options, and Titanfall 2 might get lost in the noise, but I'm here to tell you, you should take a look at it if you have any kind of interest in single player. Because now it seems to me that these multiplayer games have rediscovered the joy of having a single player campaign. Battlefield 1 had a little bit of one. It was pretty nice. But Titanfall 2 really has a fantastic campaign mode, one that I would argue is one of the best campaigns I think that came out this year. And what I really like about it is not only does it have a compelling story, not only is it setting in a really interesting sci-fi universe, not only does it take a lot of the gameplay that you know from multiplayer, the fact that you can jump in and out of a Titan, but also you can do a lot of wall running, and there's some interesting platforming to go along with the sort of expected super cool multiplayer, not multiplayer, but super cool first-person shooting sort of thing in tactical combat situations. But what's really interesting about it is how they mix it up, and what's really compelling is there's a part in the game, and this is a slight spoiler, so if you don't want to hear anything about some sort of surprises in the game at all, then skip ahead. Ready? Have you skipped ahead? Okay. So those of you who don't mind a little bit of a spoiler, it's not really a huge spoiler, but there's a part in the game where there's a short, maybe 2 levels of sort of like time travel. And it's not a lot of time travel. You're basically fighting in this old, abandoned, beat-up base. And it's now been overrun by the native wildlife, and you're fighting that stuff. However, with this time-traveling device, you can go back a week or so in time to when the base was still thriving and full of people. What's interesting about it is you don't just go back in time and see what was happening there. You can bounce back and forth instantly from the present to a couple weeks ago and back. And what's cool about it is while you're in the story behind, that timeline is still going forward. So you'll go into a room and back in time, and all the guards are there, and they're like, wait, there's a guy here, get him. And then you go back forward in time, so from their perspective that you disappear. And then you go back in time again, and now you're somewhere else. And they'll actually react like you just disappeared and went across the room, and they'll be like, wait, he's moving very erratically. What's happening? And you can use this bouncing back and forth in time as combat strategy. So you go back to the present, and all of a sudden you're fighting a giant creature. He hits you once he's about to kill you, so you hit your time button. Now you go back in time, and now you're in the other room. The creature's gone, which is good, but now these guards trying to shoot you, and you go back and forth, and you can bounce around. Really, really interesting. And the coolest part about this is that entire mechanic, which is really cool, is not found at all in the multiplayer. So they didn't just slap on an interesting story on top of the normal multiplayer mechanics. They actually spent some time really thinking about a compelling campaign with compelling, interesting things that only work in first person. Not only that, but they also made a compelling sort of AI role and great voice acting for your Titan, who is your sort of companion, and the Titans all bond with their pilots and become sort of a thing, and you feel that camaraderie. Really, really great campaign. I think it's one of the best campaigns of this year, honestly. And so don't miss out on that. If you like a good sci-fi story and like a good campaign, Titanfall 2 is worth the price of admission just for the campaign. It's not super long, but a lot of the campaigns nowadays aren't super long, right? You look at a Halo, you look at a Gears of War, you look at those kind of games, they're only looking at like 10 hours or so of campaign time. And Titanfall 2 is about the same, but then you have a great multiplayer gameplay experience as well. But I think, for the voice acting, for the awesome storyline, for the great, great mechanics and really cool experiences, not to mention the fact that I really take good advantage of the fact that you can hop around and bounce and do all kinds of crazy things. There are some really interesting things happening in Titanfall 2's campaign, and I highly recommend it. If you're a fan of sci-fi campaigns, check it out. That's Titanfall 2, out now on Xbox One and PlayStation 4.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the App. A segment in which, hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show. Seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, and as the last few leaves start to drift down from the trees here in New England, you know what that means. That means that Russ is going to be eating something pumpkin flavored, disgusting, and then cold is right around the corner, and that the Podfather has just come back from Germany.
Yes.
That's right. So it's fall, and that means that Essen just happened, and Stephen Buonocore from Stronghold Games and the D6 generation, of course,
right,
has come back to tell us what happened over in Deutschland and how everything went.
Yeah,
probably drinking a pumpkin beer, right? So
exactly.
That's fine.
They don't do that. They don't.
No, not over there, but
they don't embrace the gourd over in Europe. Come on,
and
you're correct.
A lot of people think that Stephen goes over there to Essen to pimp out Stronghold Games, but actually that's just his cover.
That's right. That's right.
He's actually there as a cub reporter for the D6 generation.
That's right. Oh, I thought you were going to mention his lederhosen.
No, he's in there.
I thought you were going to mention me going over to just drink good German beer.
No, you're there, and then with the whole thing about he started an entire gaming company as a cover for the fact that we needed someone to go to Essen, get in there as a vendor, and not know it's from our podcast.
Stephen Buonocore, cub reporter.
Right.
Dun 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 dun. Now, straight from Deutschland.
All right. So, Stephen, how was it? This is now. What Essen are you on to now? How many times have you been?
It's been every year since the first sort of full year of Stronghold. So 2010 was the first year, and was the first year I was on the show. So I think it's a 1-for-1 for my Essens and my appearances on the show.
Again, coincidence, or is the gaming thing just a cover for a reporter? It's not a coincidence. These things are happening.
It might not be.
It's right.
And I hear that I'm tied now with this appearance for the most number of third chair appearances, right? Is that right?
The most non-Rafe third chair appearances, yes.
Non-Rafe.
It is non-Rafe.
Non-Rafe, right.
Yeah.
It would never take away his. So
no, the third chair emeritus will always hold his sway.
Yep.
Absolutely. So this would be, I guess, my 7th Essen, and it's continues to be, a bigger and better and more wonderful experience year after year over there. The Europeans embrace gaming, and they certainly embrace Stronghold Games. So it has been incredible, and it's been an incredible run as Essen has grown, as the industry has grown, so has Stronghold Games grown. Very, very great experience.
Very cool. Now, how have you seen Essen changing, particularly this year? So, what was different about the convention, but also what was different about your preparation for it? Was it pretty much the same as last year for you? Have you got this down to a science, or are you constantly evolving what Stronghold Game does when they go to Essen?
Yeah, preparation's interesting. I mean, in a lot of ways, Essen is my hardest convention. Obviously, doing it, from 6,000 miles away, organizing it.
Right.
And in some ways, it's the easiest convention, which is kind of an interesting way of looking at it. Because in Essen, I actually have a logistics company, a local company to the city of Essen that takes care of setting up everything for me. So essentially, I pay them to store stuff year over year, and they show up, they set it all up, they stock my refrigerator that I actually have in the booth,
Nice.
and they put everything ready for me to go and hit the ground running. The stuff that obviously it takes a lot of work, on the ground there is getting all of those games ready for sale, because by far, without a doubt, Essen is the biggest convention for Stronghold Games, biggest convention for many companies in the amount of sales that go on directly to the consumer. All of the eyes of the industry of the consuming portion of it, all of the gamers are really focused on that as being the pinnacle of the year. So we bring in a lot of games, and all of our big releases almost hit at that same moment of time. In Essen, Germany.
So the listeners here in America have a sense of scale, because I know we talked about this in the past, but I just want to remind folks who may not have listened to your coverage of Essen in the past. When you say it's the largest one for Stronghold Games, What's your largest convention in the U.S. in terms of like how much you bring to it or prepare for it? And then is Essen sort of like an order of magnitude more? Is it like 20% more? Like, give people a sense of the idea of how it jumps from your best U.S. convention to Essen.
Gen Con is certainly the biggest convention for Stronghold, and most U.S. companies, most companies generally who come to the United States, Gen Con is going to be the biggest convention. And Gen Con, it's hard to compare the two because they are very, very different shows. And that's something that I think we've even talked about in the past. Right. Essen is one tremendous exhibit hall. So if you think of the Gen Con exhibit hall, which is massive, right? We all know it takes, you can walk around that thing for days and not really see it all and certainly not pay attention to everything. Now take that size and probably bigger, because the Essen exhibit hall, just like the Gen Con exhibit hall, has been increasing in size year after year. And the funny thing is, it's sort of I'm kind of doing a tangent here. The size of the convention center in Essen, which is the name of the city, the size of that convention center is so big that they could continue to expand at, 20% rate per year and not fill this thing up for several years. It's that much space that they have. From when I started going, they were in like one set of halls, and then this convention center had to like redo the halls. So they just shifted everybody over into these other halls, and now they're slowly taking over the past halls. So it is just massive. So the conventions are very different. You have one that is only an exhibit hall. That's how Essen runs, where you go and you visit all of your favorite vendors, your favorite exhibitors, your favorite publishers. You sit down in their booths and you play the games. There's nothing that happens like sort of beside it. There's no events. There's no like ticketed gaming. There's nothing that happens after hours. You go there, you start at 10 o'clock in the morning, you play till 7 o'clock at night, and then it's all over. So it's a very different experience than a Gen Con, where you have multimedia things going on. You have events in the evenings, you have role playing, you have video games, you have everything that you can possibly think of, ticketed gaming, very, very, very different experiences. And the difference, I would recommend that anybody like who's never been to one goes to see something like this, because it's a spectacle of a different kind versus what we have as in the United States as Gen Con.
Very cool. Now, is it still growing, do you think, or is it sort of starting to plateau? How did 2016 compare to 2015?
No, it's growing in a very, very serious way. In the same and while the Gen Con figures, people's kind of said plateaued or a little bit, but they still grew. Essen has grown significantly again this year. Now, the way they measure it is a little bit harder. Like they measure turnstiles. I didn't get the unique attendance for this year. I didn't see that anywhere. But a turnstile means if you buy like a 4-day badge, you're counted as 4 people, right? That's what a turnstile means, versus a unique attendee, which is, okay, I have a badge, I'm one person. Doesn't matter how many times I walk in or how many days that badge is good for. The 2015 numbers at Essen was 162,000 turnstiles. This year it was 174,000 turnstiles. So that's a very, very, very nice increase in attendance. But bigger than that, or one of the other things to measure it on, the number of vendors, exhibitors, people like me that were there last year, 911. This year, 1,021.
Wow. There's 10% right there.
Yeah. The number of countries that are represented. Now, this is very, very different, right, from a U.S. convention. The number of countries represented. Last year was 41 different countries. This year, 50 different countries.
Wow.
And the most telling thing of all is that last year, it was over 900 new games released. And while I can't confirm this for sure, I've heard it was over 1,200 new games released this year. So all of these things point to the fact that while the biggest growth in the industry, I've been talking about this on my podcast as well. The biggest growth in the industry is really in North America from a sales basis. The other publishers I speak to in Germany about their sales. the biggest growth is sort of in North America right now, but the European growth, certainly in number of new games, certainly in people who are looking at the industry, or people who want to be part of it, still continues to grow in a very material way, because if those numbers are true, 900 to 1,200, excuse me, that's a like 30% more growth just in the number of new games that came out year over year.
Wow, that is crazy.
And that's at one moment in time. That doesn't count for new games that came out, in the middle of the year or something like that.
Right.
In Germany and in Germany, in Europe in general, that's the moment where they truly release all of their games. Right. It certainly is bigger here too, in the Gen Con to Essen timeframe. But that's the biggest time when things get released, especially in Europe.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, is it still, in the past, so Gen Con kind of has a pretty eclectic mix of games. There's definitely a lot of, sort of the American style stuff from companies like Fantasy Flight, but also there's a healthy dose of Euro style games and, of course, RPGs and everything else. You mentioned earlier that it's mostly board games, not a lot of RPGs, probably no miniature gaming presence to speak of, but is gaming style still predominantly Euros, or are the American games really making good penetration?
There's certainly a penetration of American style games. There's no doubt about it. They have embraced there was this old saying that you couldn't really release certain types of themes, for the German market, and some of the general European market. Space themes weren't good, and fantasy and sci-fi wasn't good. Absolutely, that myth has been blown away. That's just not really the case anymore. Certainly, if you still look at some of the bigger games, some of the hotter games, and some of the more traditional games, they still have very traditional farming and running villages and towns and things like that. Those things are still hot, will always remain that way. But there's still now American style games are certainly there, making their inroads. Space themes are there. But you're going to have to say overall, the market is going to be dominated by the Euro games on one level or another. And some of that you can kind of see that by what was in the Essen hotness list, for the most part, is our Euro games with a smattering of other things and other themes.
Well, that's a good segue into what was the hotness, Stephen. So what was
how did I do that?
I know you led that right in there. So what is the hotness? Like, what were the games that people were lining up that must have? I know a lot of the games see action, of course, with 1,200 titles. It's probably a little bit harder to spot some of this stuff. But is there still that sense of there's must-have games and there's games everybody's talking about, like you see at Gen Con?
Yes, I certainly think that there is. Board Game Geek does a great. They do the Geek Buzz every year. From their booth, you visit their booth, and basically, essentially, you thumb the games that you think are the best games, the games you played and you really loved. And I'm going to be very. I don't know how to put it. I'm humbled. I really, truly am humbled by the fact that Stronghold Games had three games in their top 10 on the Geek Buzz. That's a scary kind of thing to think about.
That's really good. Now, are you starting to figure out the fact you have 3 this year?
No.
Is that a record for you? Or
well, I don't know if anybody's ever. It's
amazing,
insane.
right? So are you figuring, like you mentioned, you've been going for a long time now, and you've started to sort of they're Euro-centric. The three games that are on the list here from you. Well, I haven't played Fable Fruit yet. I did just get it. It looks fun. Feels a little less Euro-y to me based on theme, but I know Terraform Mars has got definitely elements of Euros really strongly into it.
Sure.
Are you starting to make sure you have things in your catalog that really appeal to Essen, or is it more you just have a gut for what you think a good game is, and it just happened to work out this year that's what the folks at Essen really appreciated too? Or is it?
I'd love to say that I'm a genius, but I'm not. I'm not. One of the things I always say is that I'm not the smartest guy in any room, but I will always seek out and find the smartest people around to want to be around and work with them. And I'm going to give all the props and, completely tip my hat to my partners in Europe, who I work with and who have brought in great games into their catalog. Now, I've made those relationships, and in doing so, I know how to pick the right people to work with. That's kind of what Stephen Buonocore does the best. I find people that I say,
he's a people person.
I am a people person. I think most people who meet me and want to,
that didn't save that guy's job in Office Space. I'm just saying.
Very good. I go out, and I find really great partners to work with. So Eggert Spiele and Spielworks and 2F Spiele. These are companies that are simply brilliant at finding great game designs, working with the game designer, and bringing those games, to fruition, bringing them out to final product. And I'm happy to have strategic partnerships with each one of those and others around the world. And with them, the games that I mentioned, some of the games that I just, we're going to about talk about, hit the top 10 on the Geek Buzz, and that's really an amazing thing. So, I might as well mention that, right? So, Terraforming Mars, right? That's almost the 800-pound gorilla of the hotness on Board Game Geek in general.
Yeah, you did. That was a home run, dude. Home run. Yeah.
I'm floored by the fact that it has stayed there and just continues to have such great buzz and great reviews and stuff like that. It ended up as number 1 on the Geek Buzz for Essen. It was great, of course, that we had several partners for the game. So Stronghold Games, of course, had the English version of the game, as well as the developers of the game. They had their own version in smaller quantities, Fricks Games. So I want to give big props to Fricks Games for creating this game, bringing it to us, and then we helped in the final development to get it out. Schwerkraft is the German publisher, and Rebel Games, rebel.pl in Poland. And now for the next printing, we're going to have a dozen new languages that are going to be going on with Terraforming Mars, which, by the way, for all the geeks out there that are dying to get a copy, and it's been now out of print essentially since it hit the street, it will be back in January. And I apologize for the delay. It's just, when you have a demand like this, you cannot determine what that demand is going to be 5 months away, from the actual, street date. So you do your best, you take a big chance. And of course we underestimated it by quite a bit.
Nice. Awesome. So what else was on the hotness list? Did you get to play them all?
No, well, I certainly didn't get to play them all. Yeah. That goes without saying. When I'm in Essen, I'm a meeting fanatic. Mm-hmm. I literally take meetings every half hour, starting from when the show starts to the show ends. Just constantly another person comes in, another company comes in, meeting with people. So I didn't play. I played none of the new games out there except for my game specifically. But the rest of the hotness, I guess we should just kind of mention. Cottage Garden. Uwe Rosenberg had 2 games there, Cottage Garden and a Feast of Odin. Feast of Odin was very hyped beforehand. Yeah. So those are very big games, very Euro style games. Codenames Pictures, of course, was going to be on there, and Seven Wonders Duel, right. Pantheon. Those are big games that, just by its original cred were going to be on there. An American style game, I guess maybe the only true American style game on the list, Adrenaline. By CGE. If it's a first-person shooter come to a board game, I haven't even seen it, but that's the general style of the game. And then the other 2 games that Stronghold had on the list was Great Western Trail. It's a big, heavy Euro by Alexander Pfister. Alexander Pfister has had some amazing success recently. He's won the Kenner Spiel des Jahres, so that's the Gamers Game of the Year in Germany, 2 years in a row with Mombasa, and then with Isle of Skye, and he's won other prizes. So he's just on an absolute tear. So it was so wonderful to be able to get one of his games into our catalog with Eggert Spiele, Great Western Trail, and Fabled Fruit. You just mentioned that one, which is we created this game. It's a Freedom and Freeze game, and when he brought it to me, he talked about it, and it had these like kind of legacy elements to the game. And of course, you guys know what legacy game is, right? Right. Yeah. The game is going to evolve over time, right? But legacy games, of course, they permanently change, right? You sticker cards, you rip things up, you change the board, what we're now calling this is a Fable game. The game system is going to change over time, but it's never going to change in a permanent way. So with Fabled Fruit, you can get 20, 22 plays out of this, 22 to 24 plays on average. That's what Friedemann came up with in his simulations. And the game will remain as playable the first play to the last play. And when you're done, you can reset it. You can go to the middle. You can take out certain portions. You've experienced the game, and now you can re-experience it any way that you want. That sets it apart from Legacy. So we're getting a lot of great buzz on Fabled Fruit, and I think it's going to have some legs as well.
Awesome.
What's the deal with Not Alone? You say is very interesting.
Not Alone. Yeah, that was number 10 on the list. Small company. I believe it's a French company. It's been getting a lot of buzz on Board Game Geek. I played it a bunch of times. It is the box art, first of all, looks great. It's kind of very reminiscent. I mean, it's reminiscent of like Alien, I guess, on some level, but there's like this looming presence. You're on a planet, and there's this looming presence around you, and it's after you in one way. It's a one versus many game, 2 to 7 players, and the alien is attempting to capture you at various locations. So you as the non-alien players, you're trying to outsmart the alien by visiting locations to do the action at that location, while the alien, if he finds you there, he steals some of your will and he increases to his objective. It's sort of a first person to get most of their objective done. Either the alien or the other players playing the humans is going to win the game. And one versus many kind of game with really interesting art and really interesting interaction between the players. So, I mean, I really like it. And yes, I'm looking at it because it's such an interesting game for, potential publication in the U.S. I will admit to that, but I'm not admitting anything else.
Now, are there any of your games, given that it's predominantly, dominated by Euros, and you already mentioned that Terraforming Mars, of course, was a huge hit. Were there any games from your catalog that surprised you at how well they did at Essen?
The interesting thing is that when we have to plan these things way in advance, right? What size print run you're going to do? Like Terraforming Mars, we actually did tied for the largest print run that we've ever done for a brand new game. New title, no past cred. It's not like it's a retheming, or it's not like it's another game in a line. So we did a very big print run, and of course we completely sold out. So, but we knew about that in advance because it had already been struck. So other games that I wasn't sure about was something like Fabled Fruit. I said, this is genius, but will people really latch onto this kind of evolving game system that has a legacy element that but is not legacy? So that kind of gave me a little bit of a surprise, like, wow, people really love it. But it's also the right market. So Essen is also the right market for it. But the buzz is continuing now, which is kind of good. So you kind of get a nice Essen effect too. Not only is it on the hotness, as we can see there, but you have the effect that as it comes out and the news goes out that, hey, this was really liked, and the reviews start happening, that continues the buzz. So that kind of gave me a little bit of like, wow, this is great. This one's going to have some legs. I think that almost every one of the games that I had there did fairly well for what I believed it would do. And I guess maybe I would say that La Granja, the dice game, No Siesta, gave me a little bit also of like wow, people are really going for this. This is a follow-on game. This is a standalone game, not an expansion to La Granja, which we did last year, which was a very big game. But sometimes, a Euro gamer who likes that medium weight Euro is going to say like, a dice game based on this, that's not my thing. I don't want to do that. I'd rather play the big full version. We sold out of that game like on the first day, or maybe early on the second day. So that's another one where it was like, wow, really people are just drawn to this again, a little bit due to the cred, but like the great gameplay and the great distilled means that the designer came up with to create that game really worked for people.
Very cool. So what did you guys change this year going into it? I mean, what kind of lessons did you learn from 2015, and how did you approach Essen 2016 differently, or did you approach it differently?
I don't think that there was truly any differences in preparing for the show. Again, 7 years doing this, you get a good rhythm. One of the things that maybe you can say we're preparing differently or continuing to do well is to foster a really great team that we have there. I think that probably Stronghold Games has some of the most dedicated booth staff. We call them, we brand them as the Knights of the Stronghold. We treat them, really well, especially at Essen. The night before the show starts on Wednesday, if those who get there, we all go out for this really wonderful dinner, and we go out to a brew pub. What a surprise, right? A place in Germany and brews its own beer, and we go out and we get a keg, and they bring the keg to the table, and we all hang out together. So we continue to want to ensure that the team is enjoying their experience at Stronghold Games, and then they bring that sense of like belonging, to something, belonging to Stronghold, belonging to the industry, being part of something. And I mean, at the end of the show, they're thanking me for like helping me. And I'm like, no, thank you guys. I mean, you've done so much work. Thank you for being such great people for doing this. So that's the kind of thing that we want to continue doing year over year to ensure that we give a good experience to those people that show up at the booth to play our newest games. That makes me really happy when people leave with a great experience.
Very cool. So it sounds like you've got it down to a rhythm. So was there anything this year that kind of inspired you to make some changes for next year? Or are you feeling like you've got this totally down to a science now?
I think that next year we need to find more great games. I mean, the catalog. The catalog. People were again. I feel like I shouldn't talk too much about toot my own horn here, but people were like talking about how amazing this Essen's catalog was. And last year, leaving Essen last year, I had I added to my catalog what I called the Great Designer Series. So I was putting games into this series of games that were, from designers that have added something significant to the industry. Either they had won awards or they had just done some games that were so important to the industry. So at Essen last year, we had 504 by Freedom and Freeze. And then right after that, we had Porta Nigra by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. And I thought I'd do like 1, maybe 2 a year maximum. By the end of this year, right now, I'm going to have 7 games in that series from great designers around the world. So, I mean, continuing to find great games with my partners year after year is going to be a really important thing, obviously, for us to continue to do. But I think we're positioned very well to do that. And what happens right now, I guess, is a really important thing to talk about. Like what happens between now and next year. And that's setting up the catalog for next year. So what we do is we bring back 50 games, approximately, 50 games from Essen, prototypes, already published games. And we are now in massive playtest mode. The last last 2 weeks, people, my associates have been learning games. We've been playing games. We had 2 full days of playtesting at my house this past weekend. And this is culminating in this huge convention, this designer-publisher convention in New Jersey called Metatopia, where we bring some of these games that we've weeded through to the public, and we get their take on them. And this begins to set up our catalog for 2017 with hopefully more great games.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. So, Stephen, if there was like one thing, if someone was going to go to Essen, like if I was going to go to Essen next year, what would be your big tip for a first-time Essen goer? What's the one thing they should know or be prepared for when visiting Essen for the first time?
Mad rushes is definitely going to be part of your time there, without a doubt. It's you look at Gen Con, right? Those people probably who have gone to Gen Con, if they're from here and they're going there, so they've probably seen what happens at Gen Con when those doors open. You get that every day because every day new people show up there. So you have the mad rushes. I personally, if I was a gamer, I would not get overly caught up in the hype, and I would say, you know what? Find the games that you're interested in doing and play them there. That's the thing you should try to do the most more than anything, rather than just like go and run and buy them. Hey, as a publisher, of course, I'd love you to go rush over and buy the game. We had a line for 2 hours at the booth on the first day. It was crazy. It was absolutely insane. And while that's wonderful for us, I want people to be out there sitting down and playing the game. So, make yourself a map and find the games that you're most likely interested in, hit those games and play those games. If they're available, buy them. If not, wait until they're in stores. And then go do a tour of things that seem like they're really interesting. Just tour that exhibit hall. Look at the companies that look like they've got kind of the biggest buzz in their booth. Not necessarily what you've heard about in the past, but what's happening in the booth. Or people like having a great time. Just look around, and then just pick some games that you've never heard of and sit down and play some games. That's sort of the way to do it there. It's a very different experience than people have for U.S. conventions. This is a convention where you're going to want to walk around and you're going to want to kind of take in what they have to offer. It's sort of like going to a market and all this fresh fruit and this beautiful stuff is out there, and you go and you smell it all and you taste it all, and then pick the ones you want and bring them home with you.
Right.
And that's it. It is a very fun experience being in Essen. I would think that if people are out there who have not been there, they should take it in at one time during their life. It's a good experience.
Nice. So there you have it from Steve at Buonocore, folks.
Awesome.
Go to Essen and smell it all. That's
smell it all,
takeaway.
And that's the tagline.
Smell it all.
Go to Essen, smell it all.
Right. There it is. Well, thank you, Stephen. We're going to take a quick break here. Here from Total Fangirl. We'll be back with Stephen Buonocore more in a little bit.
All right.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, Total Fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakelin and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. Our shout out this week is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. You can head to patreon.com/the D6Generation to support the show. And I also have a very special shout out to one very special listener. So, Livy, if you're listening, thank you for being a fan of the show and continue to be the fantastic geek girl that you are. So this week, we are getting all sorts of cool movie news and trailers. And the latest trailer that came out is actually a kind of a cool one for me because once upon a time I worked for the Disney stores and I have a real soft spot for all things Disney. And it was one I was a little bit nervous about. They're taking Beauty and the Beast, which is, one of those classic animated films that is just, you kind of don't want to mess with it. Like, just leave it alone, everybody. Let it be what it is and don't make it better and don't change it up. But they decided to make a live action version of it. And this made me kind of nervous because it wasn't a live action movie to begin with. It was animated, and it's hard to take something like that and turn it into something live action with real people and real backgrounds combined with whatever CGI stuff they have to do the creatures that aren't human and make that something believable and lovable and I guess true to the original. Now they've been releasing all these still shots of it for a while, so you could see pictures of how Belle was going to look and you could see pictures of how Beast was going to look. But other than seeing how they looked and thinking, okay, yeah, that seems pretty much like how you'd expect Belle and the Beast to look, you really didn't know how the movie was going to feel. You couldn't really get that just from the photos. But today they happened to release the full trailer, and it's been all over the place on my Facebook page. Like, I've been seeing nothing except people sharing the trailer. And at first I didn't want to watch it. I'm like, I don't know. I think this is going to really disappoint me. Like, I don't want to make myself sad about something that everybody is so very excited about. But finally, on the, 400th time that it popped up in my Facebook feed, I decided, okay, fine, fine, Facebook, fine, internet. I will go ahead and I will watch the trailer. You know what? It looks incredible. I was really surprised. It's amazing. They even have some of the lines directly out of the movie. Like the scene is line by line right out of the film, which I know because I've only watched this movie roughly 9 gazillion times from having worked at the Disney store when the movie came out. So they've taken the exact words, they've taken the characters and really recreated them. And what was neat was to see how they'd done things like Lumiere and Cogsworth, because those are full size, not quite full size, but they're, larger than life characters that are, really not real humans. They're a candlestick and they're a clock. And how do you make that a human? Like you see it on Broadway and they're people in costumes that are the same size as, Belle and the Beast. But for this, they made these really intricate, amazing looking sort of, I don't know if I'm going to say animated, I'm going to say they're CGI work, but they look really cool and they're interacting with the other characters and there's Gaston in there and it looks really true to the original animated movies. So I'm excited about this one. I don't think I've ever been excited about something that's been turned from animation into live action quite so much as this film. So hopefully when Beauty and the Beast comes out, which if I'm remembering the right date, it's March 17th next year. So we got a little ways to go. Hopefully by the time it comes out, we'll find out that the trailer wasn't just getting my hopes up for nothing and that this live action version is actually as good as it looks.
Hey, you know what that sound means? That sound means that Vic the Viking approacheth, and where Vic goes, that means the folks at the War Store are soon to follow. We talked for many, many years about the awesome that is the War Store, one of our earliest and longest and most faithful sponsors at thewarstore.com. If you're a miniature gamer, there's really no better place on the internet to go to quickly and easily find your favorite miniature game. If it's made, pretty much the War Store carries it, from all the big obvious stuff, Privateer Press, Weird Miniatures, Games Workshop, you name it, they've got it. Infinity, all the big stuff, but also the smaller stuff too. The things that are a little harder to find, they've got all that as well, sorted out in great, great ways. But you know what makes the War Store my favorite place to shop? Not only do they have some of the best prices on the net, but they have the best customer services on the net, which is not normally something that go together, right? You don't normally get great service and affordable price, but that's exactly what you get from the War Store. If something goes wrong, they're there to take care of you. Neil over there at the War Store is engaged pretty much every transaction that goes on, making sure you're getting that friendly, professional, and timely service that you need. Hey, Thanksgiving approaches, and you know what that means. In addition to turkey, it also means Black Friday, and all of our friends online have great sales, and the War Store has stupid good sales. I mean, it's just, their prices go to amazingly great. So if you're looking for some hard to find stuff or some really great things about your holiday list for a long time, or for that gamer that you want to give the perfect gift to, head on over to thewarstore.com, get over there by Black Friday, and not only find what you need, but find it at a price you can afford. Thewarstore.com.
You're listening to the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what?
Who writes these?
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And so, we've got one of the premier publishers of games with us, right?
We do.
And of course, we love games, right?
We do.
And so what we thought was, Russ has noticed, and I have noticed, a sort of shift in the games that we've been interested in and that we've been playing over the course of 2016. And we were curious if those shifts were more global than just our own experiences. And then, of course, Stephen can speak to that directly, as well as tell us what kind of shifts he's seeing in not only the games that Stronghold is putting out, but the sort of games that they're looking to put out next year or the year after that. So what we thought we would do is just have a little chat about sort of what games have we been playing, or what has been drawing us to specific games over the last year or so, and how that might affect, or what it might mean for the gaming industry as we move forward.
Yeah, exactly.
You said premier publishers, though. So did you invite Chris from Asmodee North America? I mean, who else is here? Oh, me! You meant Stephen.
It's you, Stephen.
Oh,
It's
come
you.
on.
Come on.
He's the most generous man in gaming.
Yes. Bonaclaus is here with us.
Bonaclaus.
So
It's Stephen Bonaclaus.
yes,
That's very sweet. Thank you, guys.
so
All right.
because it'd be kind of because Craig's exactly right. I think one of the interesting things is because we are so spoiled for choice. Like, what attracts us? You go into the gaming store nowadays, and there's like, it feels like every week there's 5 or more brand new games to choose from, right? And so it's like, how do you walk by, the last 10, but all of a sudden the newest 11th one, that's the one you want. And so I think there's sort of some broad categories here, right, that kind of maybe we could talk about a little bit. I think one of the obvious ones, and Steve, I don't want to talk to you about this because sometimes you do this with some of your games and sometimes you don't, but what is, like, how much does the game's license matter to us? Like, I'll give you an example. I pretty much, once I saw, for me, it's a combination. It's got to be a good license I care about. So when I say license, I mean like Firefly, Star Trek, Spartacus, one of those licenses we like. Plus, it's got to have good components. So I feel like if it's a licensed game, like I've been burnt too many times on licensed games that are just card games that have, and maybe they got some of the art from the show, but, whatever. But I like the bling, though. So as soon as, literally, when I saw Star Trek Ascension, the recent release from Gale Force 9, and I saw all the plastic ships and the 3 different fleets and everything else, I almost didn't care. I mean, I cared about the mechanics, but I almost didn't. It's like, oh, Star Trek and cool bits and space exploration, I will take one. Are you guys like that? Are there certain licenses that's just a no-brainer for you?
I have not done any licensed games yet. Who knows? Maybe in the future. I think that a license in and of itself is not going to make a game great. I mean, I think we in the past we've seen a tremendous number of really bad licensed games. And there have been so many bad Star Trek games actually, and I'm a huge Trekkie, so I can say that happily, or with confidence that there really have been many bad ones.
There have. Yes.
But then recently, more of these licensed games have been better and better and better. And I have not played Star Trek Ascension, but it absolutely looks fantastic. It's one of those games where that I'm absolutely looking to get my hands on, and I have a friend of mine who's dying for us to start playing some of this. So I think that licenses are. It's one of those things that, like, you kind of, it's going to draw certain people to, and it's actually going to repulse certain people, right? Because there are people who just don't like certain, like licenses, right? They don't like Star Trek,
right?
So they're not going to be at all, moving toward a game like Star Trek Ascension. But those who do like it, if they hear the buzz is good, they're going to be twice as ready to latch onto that game.
What about you, Craig? Do certain licenses really attract you?
Well, I mean, I think it's a great sort of introductory launch point for interest. It works as a great hook. But I would say that was very insightful, Russ, when you're talking about sort of that licensing cash grab with like a quick, cheap, cheesy card game sort of, and but at the opposite end of that, you've if they've taken the time to put a really good game behind that license and it's all blinged out and it looks really cool. But then I think you're talking about more than just the license. But I think what a license does for you is it works as a hook, sort of to draw you in. And it might be a tiebreaker if it's like, oh, the game looks like it might be okay, but it's Star Wars or whatever. But I think I also think Steven makes an excellent point. Like if Star Trek Ascension was Firefly Ascension, I'd be totally looking at it. Mm-hmm. But it's Star Trek Ascension, so I'm like, if Russ makes me play it so we can review it eventually, I'll play it. But so it really does. You have to be careful also because, I mean, we all live in our little confirmation bias bubbles, right? And I love this, so everybody loves it. Look, I've reached where I see people who love it. But at the same time, there will be some pushback. Not for the real. I mean, not enough to matter if you're talking these really big licenses. But you see this a lot with smaller companies that want to go this route, can't afford the big licenses, so they go with a smaller comic book or a smaller TV show or something like that. And I mean, if you look at The Walking Dead, for instance, somebody out there is licensing the hell out of The Walking Dead. and you've got board games and miniature games, and you're looking at it going. It's kind of like there's what was it? The Ender's Game did a whole bunch. Yeah. When Ender's Game the movie dropped, somebody was just
ready.
Whipping out licenses to end the just to beat the band, and these games are coming out with like no thought behind them from what I could see. So I think it's a double-edged sword. I think if you don't work it right, or if you kind of cheap out or can't afford to get one that's really going to help you, it can hurt you.
And licensed games get extra attention simply because of the license, right? And
right.
So the next Star Wars game, the next Star Trek game, the next Firefly game, those really just like boom, people like gravitate to it, and they like, oh, what is that? So if they don't have the thought of mechanics, they don't have the thought of gameplay backing them, it's gonna truly sink the entire game. So kudos to those who take that extra step, and really make sure that the gameplay is great, before they just slap the IP on it. And I think that we've gotten that lately in many of these licensed games.
Well, I think too. I think the combination, and I think you guys are hinting at it, which is if there's certain publishers you love and they always do it right, then when you see a licensed game from that publisher, so if you see the words Star Wars and Fantasy Flight together, for example, you're in for a treat, right? Know Rebellion's just going to be overproduced in a great way, and so is Imperial Assault, and so is X-Wing, and so is whatever they produce next, because Fantasy Flight does that stuff. Gale Force 9 also
same with Gale Force 9 has great with licenses.
They did a great job with Spartacus, they did a great job with Firefly, and now when they got Star Trek, it's like, well, if you're a Star Trek fan, you're going to be pleased, right? And so, Steve and I look forward to the day that you get a licensed game, because you also do a great job with your work. What about sort of a subcategory of this, which is specific themes? So are there specific, and I'm not talking about mechanics, I'm talking about themes. So are you, if you're a medieval person, or if you're a science fiction, kind of person, or are there certain, Stephen, maybe when you think about the stable of, the games you offer, are there certain themes you look for to kind of flesh out your offerings?
Yeah. Theming is very interesting, and I'm a theme guy. I mean, that's the games that I play. I want theme to really shine through, and I'm amazed at sometimes the themes that like end up working. I mean, like this. How many games are there about farming,
right?
And various types of farming, medieval farming, this, and but it sells. I mean, the theme of farming, and we're kind of doing a tangent a little bit here. The theme of farming implies certain types of mechanics, and I don't know, but it seems that people hook right into that. And the way that you think about a farm and the way that it is structured and the things that you do work well for games. So I've announced in a soft way that we're doing Fields of Green with our Tipia games next year. They've already launched it, and they did a Kickstarter. They launched it, and it's farming, but but the funny thing is it's taking the Among the Stars system, right? Science fiction, Among the Stars, and a card drafting game, and they're moving it into farming, adding a couple of things as well. And people are like, "Oh my God, this is great! I don't really like sci-fi, but I want to farm on the table." And I'm like, I find that idea amazing. So while that's not the kind of theme that normally grabs me personally, that theme in general has to be looked at because it just sells, and mechanics can be crafted very easily for farming themes. Now going to the themes that I like, Terraforming Mars, right? Mm-hmm. Right now is the number one game on the hotness on Board Game Geek. Has been there for like 2 months at this point, and has been in the top 5 since before Gen Con, which is amazing. And I thank the gamers out for getting it there and their embracing of it. And I've looked at this, my game, Terraforming Mars, and I'm like, I know it's a great game, of course, but why has it grabbed people so much? And to me, the reason is that people are looking at that theme of Mars. Mars is hot, and they're saying like, this is the future of the human race, and this is where we're going to be going. So I'm hooked into this, and I'm sold on this idea that Mars is a great theme. That's why I think that has done so well, for Stronghold Games, and in general in the market with all the other Mars games that are coming out now or soon.
Yeah, cool. So what, Stephen, as you think about themes, like, are there certain ones that you're like, is that a big part of the games you choose? Is like it's a theme you don't have yet in your stable? Or are there certain themes you like to have more versions of or different sets of mechanics for the same theme because it's a hot one, like farming or whatever?
Well, I'm a nerd, right? So I mean, I want geeky themes. That's what I love, and everything that I do, I love to be able to put my passion behind. Right? This is I am Stronghold Games, and I sell the games heavily, and I believe in them. So for me, science fiction games and fantasy type games are the kind of things that I really want to see in my theming. However, I do a lot of games with partners, right? Partners from Europe, partners from overseas. So they're into the farming and they're into those things. But that's okay. So, I mean, we can have both styles of games because the Euro gamers are going to be looking for that more traditional type of theme. Buonocore is going to be looking toward the more fanciful stuff. And I can get both of those things into my stable. Certainly, I'm always looking for something unique, and that's kind of a big thing, and we're probably going to move into that in a second. To me, something unique and not done before in one way or another, theme-wise or otherwise, is always going to be something that I'm looking for.
Cool. So, Craig, what about you? What are your favorite themes in games? What game?
I jumped the moment I saw that because I think zombies for me is a huge theme. But then there's a lot of games that I don't have and don't want that are like Dead of Winter. I never had any interest in. Mm-hmm. So I think theme for me, I don't necessarily chase themes, but again, themes can be something that sort of draws me in. So like the Walking Dead, the Mantic Games version that I did with the Kickstarter, and I just got and barely opened because Kickstarter. But I mean, I think when I look at the games that I have recently, I spent not a lot of money because of the way that they were that I bought them on Kickstarter and stuff. But Wild West, and I have Tiny Epic Western. I haven't even opened the box it was shipped in, but I have it. Bang the Dice game, the expansion. I got the expansion at. So I mean, I really like Wild West themes. I really like zombie themes. And then quite often, so I think it works for me in two different directions. It might be the hook, kind of like licensing, but it could also be sort of like the last little nudge. I don't know that I would have gotten. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee you I would not have gotten Vikings on board if it had been factory workers on board, right? Or shoes on the conveyor belt. Or you think about the mechanics in Vikings on board, and it's very much a Euro game, right. And you could easily see those Viking longboats instead be conveyor belts, and you're trying to get as many shoes on there as possible. But it was Vikings, damn it. So I think that's something that really kind of that got me to buy that game. So I probably wouldn't have even looked at the game if it hadn't been Vikings. And then it was neat and I liked it, and so I jumped on because it was Vikings. So I think that theme can play a huge part in a game for me. I would say it is a. I don't really like abstract games, so I will scrap everything I just said, and I will say that theme is a requirement for me. If I don't enjoy the theme, I'm not going to enjoy anything else about it. There, I said it. That's it.
Themes are very important to me too, so I'm not surprised that either of you said that.
No,
themes are a requirement.
Huge.
What about nostalgia? So, like when sort of a classic game makes a comeback or gets reprinted, I'm thinking of and Stephen, I know you've done a few of these, right? So you look at things like. Sure. Escape from Atlantis, which is a classic. You reprinted it. It was one of the games that launched your company, right? It was fantastic. And a lot of us who had played the original were like, "Oh wow, it's even better. It's back. It brings back my childhood memories." How valuable is bringing back like reprints like a nostalgia games? Is that a big? If you see one of those come out, Stephen, are you like immediately drawn towards it if it's a favorite?
It's interesting. As you mentioned, Survive obviously was a tremendous. For us, and we did Code 777, Confusion. We sort of started the company based on on doing reprints, and on some level that's a nostalgia thing. The well of those kinds of games, I think, dries up over time because some games just don't need a reprint, right? I mean, that's sort of just the basis of it. It's like, why wasn't it done before? Because, well, maybe it's just not that good of a game in the modern market. So, a game like Survive is perennial. It transcends just the fact that, wow, this is nostalgic. I remember playing this in the past. It's just that good of a game that needed to be brought back, and we were lucky enough to be there at the right time to get it, from Hasbro, who had the game but just let it go away because they weren't selling 1 million copies a month or something like that. But now I don't think there's as much of that going on. There are so many good games out there now, as I mentioned before, and the modern mechanics that are embedded in these new games, I think that trumps nostalgia on a lot of levels. So I think we're going to see on some of a little less nostalgic, but because you need to have just great gameplay as well to really have, to really grab the gamer's interest these days.
All right. What about you, Craig? Does nostalgia have any impact on you if you see a game that's like a game you loved or is a reprint of a game you loved? Does that bring you in?
I don't think I can really say, because I didn't really get into these kinds of games sort of till late in life. So there really hasn't been an opportunity for that kind of thing to come around. But if I think about it, there are a couple games that, like, if Broadsides and Boarding Parties was redone, for instance, boom, right, I'm going to get it. But then if you look at sort of second editions, which I don't think really is what you're talking about. So if I look at, I got the Game of Thrones, the board game, right, when it first came out, and I loved it. And then they reprinted it and they redid it, and it came out with a second edition, and I never bought that, mainly because I was like, well, I already have this one, so I got kind of frustrated. But I don't think that's what you're talking about, like a real,
I think it can be
decades later sort of reboot.
Well,
not reboot, but
I think it's games that appeal to our nostalgia. So, for example, if you used to play 40K in college, and then there was some sort of flavor of 40K back, like you could argue that some of the stuff that Fantasy Flight does with their 40K board games, that could be an attraction to nostalgia for us, because while we don't play 40K much anymore, we still love the universe, we still love the theme.
Right.
It's kind of
that's a different topic, because what Fantasy Flight did with Warhammer 40K board games was cool and interesting, and I have some of those, and I played others, and I thought it was neat. What Games Workshop is now doing with what they're calling "quote unquote" board games is something that doesn't interest me in the slightest. Which is interesting, because it went closer to, hey, look, it's a board game that's actually really just kind of 40K on a board.
Yeah,
and that I have no interest in. But back when so that's a totally different topic that we could talk for hours on. But I mean, if it harkens back to something that I really enjoyed when I was younger, I think it would be something I would look at for sure. But I don't think it would like knock something into the must-have column.
I mean, it did for me with Forbidden Stars. Like, that was you could argue that's a pretty normal, space exploration conquest game. But you put 40K in there with orcs and Eldar and Space Marines with little Marines and little spaceships, and all of a sudden it appeals to my I guess nostalgic love for 40K. And I think, Stephen, you did this too with some of your games. Like, you brought back sort of the 50s sci-fi theme, right, in some of your stuff.
Right.
And so
that's nostalgia of theme, right? So Space Cadets Away missions, you brought back that 50s look, of the campy 1950s sci-fi. And we were, that was a very exciting, different take on sci-fi. And again, something I love, sci-fi, but we did it very differently. So I thought that was a move to do nostalgia, but do it a little bit differently, not with the older game, but with an older theming of a game.
Yep. And I think that works for me. Like, I see those kind of things, and I used to love Buck Rogers. I like that style game. I used to play the Buck Rogers RPG back in the day. Speaking of nostalgia, this just in. Did you guys see this on the news? Dungeons and Dragons has officially been accepted into the Toy Hall of Fame.
Oh, really?
In Rochester,
Oh,
New York.
serious?
Yeah, so in Rochester, New York, there is a Toy Hall of Fame. This just came out on CNET on today, November 10th. And and it is now available in Rochester, New York, overcoming its once maligned reputation as being a tool of the devil. Dungeons and Dragons has now been accepted in the Toy Hall of Fame, right next to Fisher Price
Excellent.
and Weebles. So there.
Now that's interesting to tie in nostalgia, because I was very interested in the Dungeons and Dragons board games when they came out, but didn't like them, so didn't get them, and now don't at all feel the need to get them. But remember what was it, Dungeon Command?
Yes, yep.
When those little Dungeon Command, I love Dungeon Command. That came out, and I got it all. So, so nostalgia, I think, can have a definite effect on it, but it's not a deciding factor.
Yeah, and I think Lords of Waterdeep's a game with great mechanics, but I think with the addition of being in, the D&D universe, it does add a little bit of fun to it also. So I think if they can get
I never role played in
Forgotten Realms.
In Forgotten Realms.
Oh, but anyway,
so it didn't have that. And I got it anyway.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's still on paladins and clerics and rogues. Oh my, right?
Yeah. Oh my.
Oh my. What about when it's a new take on a favorite style? So earlier this episode, I mentioned that I am a sucker for certain style of games. So one of those styles is 4X space exploration. Pretty much, if it's a 4X space exploration game, I will immediately look at the box. The other one that's my one that gets me almost every time is what I call the Overlord style game, right? So the one where there's one player versus many folks, and you're going through some kind of dungeon crawl-esque type situation, like Level 7 or Descent or Imperial Assault or now. So when I saw the new Conan game on Kickstarter and it was that same format, I was like, "Ooh, sign me up. I am a sucker for these things." So do you guys have a style of game that if you see it, or sort of maybe a game type that if you see it, you're like, "Ooh, it's sort of a new iteration on my favorite way to play a board game"? Does that draw you in? Stephen, does that draw you? Go ahead, Craig. Sorry. Craig, you first.
No, Stephen. No, Stephen. Stephen, speak.
Well, I'm I guess my favorite mechanic of all is Hidden Trader, hidden roll, I guess on some level. So I'm always looking for that. I mean, it's just fun because that mechanic in general just sets people against each other or for each other across the table, and there's all kinds of interaction when I have to figure out, well, who's on my side and who's not on my side. So I'm kind of looking for that all the time. So when I'm not playing games that have lots of conflict in general, that's the one that I'm always looking for. I don't know that there's been a new one recently. We did Dark Moon a year and a half ago, and it's still doing great for us. But that to me is one of my favorite things that I want to see in games. And what do you guys have?
Well, I would say in my tastes, especially over the last year, I noticed when I was thinking about what we're going to talk about tonight is in these smaller, quicker games. Not so much a specific style, but more like the tiny epic games, or that little chibi dungeon crawl that I got at these smaller, or Dark Deeds is an excellent example. Also, these games that are compact, they're quick, you can throw them down really quickly, get a game in an hour or even less. But at the same time, it's a fun game, and I think that part of my collection is the only part that really grew over the last year. I would say between Tiny Epic Games and Dark Deeds and that chibi game and the dungeon, whatever it was, and a few others. And so I don't know if that's like more lifestyle than anything else, but in a time where I sort of committed myself to not jumping in on a whole lot of games, knowing that Russ buys the ball and I can just play his copy. The area where my collection is growing are these smaller sort of targeted experience games where you can sit down, play a quick game, have fun, but it's not like an evening long. It's not taking up a lot of room on my shelf, that kind of thing. So I think that's sort of where my sort of focus or my attention has been lately.
Yeah.
There's a general trend in the industry toward, this has been going on for years, toward shorter games for essentially the reasons you're saying. Plus, people just don't don't have time, obviously, certainly for 3-hour games and 4-hour games. And even having the ability to just, instead of playing like a big meaty Euro that's going to go 90 to 120, they're going to want to just have something where they can just bring it out, play it for a half hour, and they're done, or even shorter sometimes. And there's always that time where, we're going to play the big meaty game, but Joe's not here yet, so we got to wait for him for like another 20 minutes. Well, we can sit around and talk about politics, or we can play a game and let's play something for like 10 and 15 minutes. Right. So that whole thing and speed games and just short filler games, there's always going to be that, and I'm always attracted to that. Fits great in my pocket line, with Diamonds and Stellar Conflict and Bear Valley. It fits great in that size box, and I'm always looking for games that'll be that part of my catalog, because it's definitely a part of the market that's expanding well.
And sort of to launch off a brief side note, I really enjoy games that fit that niche, but also go on to expand to a larger game. Both Spartacus to a greater extent, because you could have a really short game or a really long game if that's what you want, but also Dragon and Flagon, where you're choosing when where to put those 4 tokens. So the end of the game could come sooner or could come later. I love games that not only try to do that, but do it well. And both of those games do that extremely well, where you can have a quicker game of Dragon and Flagon or a longer game of Dragon and Flagon by just moving those 4 tokens down that track, so that the guards are going to come later, which is going to give you more opportunity to do more of those cool sustained moves and things like that. Yeah. So I like a game. I like those flexible games that could be quicker or more or long lasting, but do it well.
Yeah. Yep. I had speed of play as its own separate category, because any game that plays fast, I immediately get attracted to.
Right.
But one of the ones, for example, a recent one I got that I think kind of incorporates a lot of the stuff we talked about here was Colt Express. Right. So I got enamored with Colt Express because it's fast. It's got great components. It's got a theme that's in my wheelhouse, which is cowboy. So it was like it had all the above stuff. It had all the buttons. But I think when you get speed of play combined with a great looking game and a fun theme, you have a winner. And that was, I think there are certain games that really nail it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Steve.
That's, with Dragon and Flagon. I mean, it's got that physical beauty to it as well, right? Like Colt Express, you see it physically on the table, and that just brings you into the game. And then in the case of certain games, playing it fast as well and looking really good, like these games, is really going to be helpful selling point.
Yep. And actually, to sort of tie it all together, like Russ just did, I have 3 what I would call full-sized board games that I bought this year, and all of them are fit into that exact thing. So I've got Vikings on board, which came with the really cool 3D ships and everything. And I got Dragon and Flagon, which of course comes with all the 3D cool furniture and stuff and everything. And I actually have in the mail, when it eventually shows up, Colt Express, which has those cool train cars and everything. So all 3 of those in different points, whether it's like the fantasy sort of the tavern where the adventurers meet, or the Vikings, or the cowboys. There's sort of intersections of theme and bling and mechanics. And I think these new 3D game, or I won't say they're new, because I mean, I just mentioned Broadsides and Boarding Parties, which had giant plastic 3D ships. But it seems to be a bit of a trend to have a more exciting looking 3D board or 3D game experience that kind of ties that all in together as well. That if I'm honest, which I just realized that probably pulled me in at least as much as theme and game mechanics and time and license, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, and
I think that cool 3D look on the table.
I agree, and I think we didn't have a category for bits, but I think components are a big part, right? So I think if it looks good, if the game's got some good looks to it, that immediately draws us to it, at least for me. The last thing I wanted to mention, because I think there is a space, one of the things that gets me too, and I don't know if this gets you guys, is when they mix 2 flavors together that are not normally paired. And usually you see this in taking a Euro style mechanics and putting it in an American style theme. So Dungeon Lords is one of the first games I saw do this, where it took some really heavy Euro mechanics and put it in a dungeon crawl game where you're the evil overlord trying to beat the heroes out, right? And very classic, still kind of heavy, kind of slow playing, but it was really cool American theme, right? I think Scythe is a new great example of that, where it's sort of like steampunk, map control, world domination, amazing bits and components game, but also very Euro mechanics, which is really interesting. Eclipse did something similar, right? Very, space exploration, 4X, conquer the galaxy, but Euro, right? I think those games kind of hit home because people are interested in the more, the Euro mechanics. To a lot of us, sort of American themed games still feel kind of new and fresh, and yet you're getting that sort of theme we talked about earlier that can really appeal to us. Stephen, does that factor in some of the stuff you guys look at your library? Would you like to personally collect?
Without a doubt. I mean, the hybrid game right now is huge, and you mentioned a lot of great examples. Where you're marrying you're marrying the best of both worlds, right? Great mechanics from the Euros, great theme from American style games. We did last year the Golden Ages, which is a civ building game.
Yeah.
And you've got a tech tree. You're building your civilization. You can go to war, but it's very expensive to do that. You can only do it 4 times during the game, essentially. So it's a very different take on civ building. It's definitely more Euro than the usual civilization building games that are out there. But it again it's showing that crossover between all of the genres that we're talking about here. And I think that we're going to see more and more of that, where American style games are going to be using, very European mechanics to create great gameplay, sort of as a first thing, and then using the theme as the grabbing point for other gamers.
Cool. Craig, what about you? I know you're not a big Euro fan, but sometimes they leak into those games and you like them, like Vikings on Board.
Well, they do, like Vikings on Board. But Vikings on Board is almost, that's a Euro game. There's no mix. Right. So I don't really, it doesn't, I don't think mixing those two things, I don't really like the Euro. I get now, and it was a long time coming, but I understand now what Euro means and that it is its own kind of unique thing. And I don't particularly care for a lot of I don't like the theming of most Euro games. I don't like the lack of player interaction, things like that. Although there are clearly Euro games that I enjoy that I have in my collection. But as far as sort of taking the two together, or mixing them, I don't really, it would depend on all those other factors, whether or not that game drew me in. It would not be the mixing of those two styles or two other styles, I wouldn't think, really, that caught my attention, because I'm not aware on that level, really. It's sort of like I have to play a game several times and then have Matt tap me on the shoulder and say, Vikings on Board is a Euro game for me to even realize I'm playing a Euro game. So I don't think that would be something I would really be aware of when I'm looking at games to play or purchase.
Well, cool. I know we're going a little long, so we should probably wrap up. Mr. Buonocore, thank you so much for joining us here again, taking time out of your busy post-Essen schedule, as I'm sure you ramp up for the big holiday. Yeah.
We need to come up with what Buonoclaus would shout from his sleigh.
Yeah, what do you say as you ride off into the night and I look out the shutters? What are you saying to me there, Stephen?
Vote for great games. Vote Stronghold. Vote Buonocore.
Wow.
That's what Santa says now?
Too soon.
Santa's a politician? What the heck happened to Santa?
I don't know.
All right. Well, anyway, it is still close. So it's all we got.
I think something along the lines of he.
He.
Yeah, I can't be ho ho ho.
Right.
Okay, well, it's got to be something.
Anyway,
fair enough.
No, anyway, so thank you guys so much for having me on the show. I enjoy this annual appearance here with you. It's wonderful. I think we do a fun thing for the gamers because we have a good time together, and this is just fantastic. So,
well,
thanks so much, and Maybe we'll get together outside of a convention at some point.
It'd be nice. It'd be nice. Yeah, it'd be awesome. So, Stephen, if people want to check out what you and Stronghold Games are up to on the internets, where should they go to find out all the latest hotness?
Well, they can go over to strongholdgames.com, of course. Find out when we're releasing new games. We keep that right there on the front page. They can sign up for our newsletter. We don't spam you, don't worry. Just get your newsletters about once a month so you can find out what's happening in the company. At Stronghold Games on Twitter, /Stronghold Games on Facebook, and my podcast, my own podcast with Ignacy Chevicek of Portal Games and Stephen Buonocore of Stronghold Games. And we talk about the industry. We talk about what's happening inside the companies. We talk about the news in the industry and like information and hints about how to get into the industry and questions from our listeners. So it's Board Games Insider. BoardGamesInsider.com, of course, and you can get it wherever your local friendly podcasts are dropped, like iTunes and Stitcher and all that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Well, Stephen, thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule, and have a great holiday season.
Yes.
Merry Buonoclaus.
Buonoclaus.
Buonoclaus. I think Russ coined something there. This Jever Notice is brought to you by all of our fine friends over at Patreon. Say it with me now. The men and women who help us keep the lights on and this show going forward in the face of overwhelming mundane reality. Today, I'd like to thank a couple corporate sponsors, FlashoverArts.com and Game Salute, as well as some good old-fashioned human beings that we know and love, Frank Reynolds, Fred Quiche, and Gary Marshall. Thanks, guys and entities, for your support. And if you'd like to support the D6 Generation and keep it going, why don't you go over to Patreon.com and check out the D6 Generation and see what this is all about. We'd sure appreciate your help. Do you ever notice how tired a single human being can get? I think I do. And then something awful happens. Right about now, where we just started Tech Week, and for those of you who don't know anything about theater, Tech Week is when you add in all of the technical elements that you've just pretended were there all along. So your students, your actors who have been acting without this sort of support for 8 weeks, they've been trying to learn their lines and do all their acting and, create these creatures out of nothing. And, of course, they've still got their own challenges to work with. And now you're going to blind them with 200,000 watts of light and booming sound effects, which in this particular case are actual booming sound effects because we have a gun on stage that goes off. And all of the costumes and quick changes and everything, and all that happens at Tech Week. We call it Hell Week. We basically live there in the theater for a week, leading up to and then during the run of the show. And so what has been a pretty draining process becomes infinitely more draining. Now, we sort of offset that by buying these students food pretty much nonstop and just keeping them fed. And ourselves, coincidentally, but it's still absolutely exhausting. And then you add in the fact that I had a last-minute deadline that sort of dropped in my lap, and I really wanted to take advantage of. And so I was writing for that, and then I've got this whole novel I'm supposed to be editing that's technically like 6 months late, although there's really no deadline. But it was in my own head. I wanted to have it finished. So doing all of that and trying at the same time to have, like a social life and, like my family not forget what I look like because they've been great through this whole thing. And then my son got sick, and then my wife got sick, and now I'm getting sick. And then on top of all of that, of course, we had this pesky little election thing that kept me up till 3:30 in the morning on Tuesday, and I have not yet been able to even start to catch up on my sleep. So things are just insane. And then you add on top of that Stephen Buonocore clause. Buonoclaw, I don't even remember. It just happened and I don't remember. And as I'm exhausted and just worn down and thinking, when is this going to end? And then, of course, usually I get sick at the end of the play. That's my body knows I can't get sick during the play, fends off whatever else is going around, knocking everybody else down. And then right around Thanksgiving, poof, off, I get sick as a dog, which, again, makes no sense to me because they're usually really healthy. This time around, I can't do that. This plague goes up this weekend, goes up Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then I have Sunday, hopefully, to mow my lawn, or at this point, just get the leaves off of it with the mower, because I haven't mowed it in a month and a half because the plague, it's insane. I don't get home till it's dark. And then on the weekends, it's been raining nonstop. It's been crazy. So I've got that. I've got a couple days. Then I've got Thanksgiving. And then on Thanksgiving Day, Russ and I fly over to Leeds for SteamCon, which we're super excited about. So I can't get sick. Normally, I would get sick that weekend and then spend the whole weekend prostrate. Oh, that's when you got to really be careful with that one. On the couch and just watch TV. And I can't do that. So I'm really, really nervous right now. And at the same time, I'm like this is where my frustration starts to build, and I get a little short-tempered, and all I want to do is put together a tank. I mean a vehicle of undisclosed and indeterminate size, shape, provenance, and genre. But I can't even do that. I tried last night, and it just wasn't going to work. And so, so I got nothing. That's basically all it comes down to. I got nothing. I did a 13-minute Did You Ever Notice before this one, but I think I'm just going to give you this one, and everybody's going to be happier for this one, I think. Because who am I to tell other people what to do with their lives, really? I mean, it's insanity. But anyway, that's it. That's all I've got to say for that. Thank each and every one of you for listening all the way to the end. We always appreciate it. I appreciate it in particular. Rumor has it there's a wacky blooper at the end of this. I can't be held responsible. I don't even remember what was happening at that point. And thanks, again, for being a listener of the D6G that goes all the way to the end. You are among the elite. I see, literally, I ran out of words. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked. You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
So Stephen, what do you really think? What's Tom Vassell really like when you just get him alone? Just to talk.
He's so mean.
Really?
He's a mean man.
Oh,
he's horrible to me.
Has he ever made you cry? No. Okay, well there's the answer right there.
There it is.
You heard it here first, folks.
Tom Vassell makes our cub reporter cry. There it is.
That's right. He kicked the cub.